welcome to Previously on X-Men.
The podcast that looks back on X-Men comics, movies, shows, characters, and more. And you can find more about this show and others like it at the network's website, radiomeanwhile.com. Other shows on the network include Three Nice Things, where we force ourselves to say three nice things about a movie with a bad and often earned reputation. I don't know why that one gave me so much trouble.
I was just going to say, do you have this memorized? You say these same things over and over. It's very impressive. And then immediately as I thought that, you were like, blah.
That's my power.
Yeah.
Radio 64, Video Game Music Remix Radio. 9021, Here We Go, a 90210 rewatch podcast.
Can I tell you a secret?
What?
That's my favorite.
Wow.
The 90210 is my favorite on the network.
I don't play favorites. They're all my favorites. But also, I host every show but 90210.
They're all your children.
Because I've been in lockdown. I haven't been listening to any podcasts, really. And now I got a dog walking job at the moment. And I'm catching up on podcasts, so I'm back to 90210.
That is some
Dylan
prime
and Kelly, what are you
podcasting
doing?
time.
And at
What
the
are
same
you
time,
doing,
I'd
Dylan
rather,
and Kelly?
I'd rather Dylan and Kelly than Dylan and Brenda.
Yeah.
So
yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
You know what? They should make it a call-in show, and you should be like, and then I thought.
I need a live show.
Yeah.
There's 90s music got me like,
Brand
where we
new.
look back at one 90s song every week. And
Which ones have you done so far?
Let's see. We did Two Princes. We did
Awesome.
Tub Thumping by Chumbawamba. We did.
Yeah, that was an interesting choice.
She's So High by Tal Bachman.
Uh-huh.
And we did Waterfalls by TLC. And up next is Kiss from a Rose. And it's actually looking like after that will be Bop. I put up a poll, and Bop won. So I wanted to put on the poll, Where Have All the Cowboys Gone? But it's too many characters for a Twitter poll. Also, there's some video series like Comic Book Coffee Break. So I imagine if you're listening to this X-Men comic podcast, Comic Book Coffee Break might be your jam. It's just me and Nick talking about the comics we read that week.
It's pretty good. That's a pretty fun time.
You can share your thoughts on this and upcoming episodes by following us on Facebook and Twitter at Previously on X. And please rate, subscribe, and share the show on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. You should definitely follow the Twitter, Previously on X, because we do ask for thoughts on the movies and the episodes and the characters we're talking about. And we just put up a poll to decide it's the first time we've done it, to decide which character spotlight we should do. Hilary wasn't thrilled with my picks.
I mean, the Sentinels as a character
The Sentinels
spotlight?
won! I'm going to have fun with that. I think that's going to be fun.
Man. I'm just going to sit back and let you talk.
They've got a crazy history. We get to talk about Nimrod, Bastion.
Yes. Oh, you're winning me over, man.
Master Mold, Mother Mold. Yeah.
So that's going to be next?
So our next character spotlight will be the Sentinels, but we have some other stuff down the line. I'm Eric Mickles, known online.
You know what I'm most looking forward to about doing that character spotlight is really getting into what made them who they are, their background and the relationships that have sort of driven them to become who they are today. Mm-hmm. That's my excitement for that.
So as I said, I'm Eric Mickles, known online as Death vs. Tweak, and that...
Thanks for just not picking that up at all.
My co-host is Hilary Gunning, who, that Sentinel snark, just translate that to this movie.
Oh, you've got snark too.
For the past couple of weeks. It's been fun.
Well, because it's taken so long for us. You made me watch this movie and then wait a couple of weeks and just stew in my anger about this movie.
This is Hilary's Bane, the movie we're talking about. And if you don't know what movie we're talking about, today we're talking about the 2016 film X-Men Apocalypse. It's 4 years old. It's
a movie that happened. They made it, and I watched it.
All right, let's just get into the history, so then we can
and crap,
and then you can just start punching it in the stomach.
Okay, I love it.
Yeah,
Let's do it.
I'll hold it, and you just punch.
You
it
tell me the people that I have to blame, and then we'll go through.
All right. X-Men Apocalypse was in basic production before Days of Future Past was released. Bryan Singer had talked about how they were planning it while filming Days of Future Past. Singer told Entertainment Weekly, "I'm co-writing the story and I'm producing it. I'm negotiating."
Co-writing the story. The story of this. Okay.
It begins. I'm negotiating.
So initially the plan was for there to be a story. Go on.
I'm negotiating to direct. We're in the process. We're trying to figure it out, schedules. My desire would be to direct it. That's where we were in, I guess, early 2014.
Okay.
he also told Entertainment Weekly, it will also address historical mutancy, meaning the deep past, mutant origins, and things like that. It's something that's always intrigued me when we think about our gods and our history and miracles and powers. And then he said, something that happens in Days of Future Past causes what's going to happen in that movie, in Apocalypse. And I'm just like, we'll talk about it. I don't understand what he means in that situation.
Something that happens. If you were a true fan, Eric, then you would know.
Oh, darn, you're right. So, CreativeScreenwriting.com has an interview with Simon Kinberg, who wrote the third X-Men movie and then came back and for Days of Future Past, and so we thought maybe he had learned his lessons, but here he is screenwriting Apocalypse. So on the character Apocalypse, Simon Kinberg had said he's a more formidable villain than we've ever had in an X-Men movie before. He's more powerful than Magneto, which we've never really seen yet. And I'm kind of like, yes, we have. That's the whole point.
We've never really seen yet?
Yeah. I'm like,
go on.
One, your previous movie had the Sentinels, and the movie you wrote prior to that had Jean Grey as going Dark Phoenix. So, he has an agenda, which is larger than a mutant human agenda, which is also something that's unique to this particular franchise. Again...
All right, keep talking. Does he say what that agenda is?
The actual threat itself is bigger than what we've done. Usually in the past, it's been more local and political. The movie is more global in the scale and stakes of the film. A lot of movies, like Transformers or Roland Emmerich movies, have global level or extinction level threats, and we've really never done that in any of the X-Men movies. Bryan Singer and I thought that after Days of Future Past, that it would be an interesting place to go with the next film, so we quickly set on Apocalypse as the villain. And I'm like, don't use Transformers and Emmerich films as your template. We wanted this to be like 2012 and Revenge of the Fallen.
Oh, great. Yeah. Cool. Excellent. Also, the scope of this does not feel bigger than the other films. Like maybe, like you see them in Germany, so I guess maybe that's what they're talking about with global. But like, aside from the basic knowledge that technically this is involving the globe, they don't make it feel like the stakes are any bigger.
I think for them, they're only thinking the third act final that's in Cairo with like the pyramids and all the Magneto nonsense. I think like that's because like X-Men First Class, we're just going to different country after different country. Like that one, we're getting like whiplash. We're globe-trotting so much. This one, it's like they go to two places. So,
and they have like Magneto use his magnetic power, but bigger this time.
Singer, and I don't remember what the interview was, but Singer had said he was going to let loose his inner Michael Bay. And it's like, stop saying Michael Bay.
He is not who we want.
So, continuing with creative screenwriting, Simon Kinberg talked about Mystique and says, Mystique starts in First Class entirely on Charles's side. Ends up following Eric, and then we find her in Days of Future Past, and she's on her own because Eric is gone. She's on her own side in that movie, but is drawn towards Charles by the end of the film and shoots Eric. Then in Apocalypse, she comes back to Charles. There's a full circle narrative over the span of this little trilogy that's about Mystique from beginning with Charles in the mansion and ending with Charles in the mansion, but not as the same timid little girl we met in First Class. And I'm like, I have a lot of issues with that. Hilary,
we'll get there.
Any issues with that? I guess it's just
she frees her. Okay, so she's what they're saying. Their ideal scenario for the character arc of Mystique is that she starts being dependent on Charles, and then she makes her own way. Which, by the way, her own way in these movies is just latching on to Magneto. But she starts, going her own way, and then by the time we hit this movie, she's her own person, and then is drawn back to these powerful men and deals with her relationship issues with them.
Well, Hilary said it instead of me.
That's their ideal scenario
that was
for
my
this
first
strong woman archetype that they're presenting to the world.
That you can like say that out loud and it not be crazy, and you're not be like, oh wait, and I mean actually, what she learns is that she's her own person and she makes her own choices. to like say that whole like it's a full circle with Charles. I'm like, oh, and
it's
then
a full circle.
And then you read this and like, and then Mystique is back to Charles and she's an X-Men. I'm like, Mystique! The character Mystique! who we had in the trilogy before, the original trilogy. Now she gets her own little emotional, like, journey trilogy in these movies, and it becomes about Charles Xavier, and I'm just like, Kinberg, what the frick? I mean, I don't know who to blame. I assume we can equally blame both Kinberg and Singer for that.
Listen, Eric, I mean, from my perspective, I mean, it's disgusting and I hate it, but also I'm not surprised. This is how it happens.
Yeah. I just don't, but even just like...
Eric, how do you even talk about a woman without the context of a man? What even is a woman outside of her relationships?
I don't know. Like, apart from the gross gender politics of it all, I don't understand why they think the character Mystique is this type of character. Like,
yeah,
and then like that the character's arc would eventually lean back. I mean, she's been we did a spotlight on her, and we talked about how she's a pretty unrepentant villain.
Yeah, which is why it starts out interesting to have her start as like Xavier's sister. Like, that's interesting as long as you understand that this is Mystique and you know where she's going. And if she doesn't go there, then it stops being interesting.
Even Days of Future Past could balance it, because her goal of killing Trask and everything, if you're saying like she's still being influenced by Magneto, then that's the journey of like, all right, first movie she was under Xavier's shadow, second movie she's under Magneto's shadow. By not killing Trask and doing everything that she's done, she's decided now that she's just gonna do what she wants to do. But then to just bring it to, as Simon Kinberg says, bring it back to Charles. I'm just like, well, then what's the point? She could still be a villainous character that's now just making her own. But they don't care about that.
Well, what's the movie where you have her come back to the mansion and sort of trick them into thinking that she's coming back, but for her own purposes?
That is the cut scenes. That is the road cut version of Days of Future Past.
Oh, the good cut. Okay. That's interesting. And if you ended up with her in that way, like coming back, but not really coming back, then that works. But no. That's not what they want. They want her to be a teacher in the mansion.
Boy, they love students becoming teachers.
In
regards to this movie being set in the 80s, Simon Kinberg said, in First Class, we used the Cuban Missile Crisis, and in Days of Future Past, we centered on the Paris Peace Accords that ended the Vietnam War. We didn't use as much history in Apocalypse, but we had nods to 1980s politics and certainly 1980s style. It's just extra fun color for these movies, and that pisses me off, because that's obviously a weakness of this movie, and you're using something that does kind of become a hindrance in your movie continuity, but you're not... Like, to just say we're using the 80s style, but, like, this is the Cold War. This should be... You should be able to do lots of interesting stuff if you're doing this, like, alternate X-Men history. This is the Cold War,
and they have a moment where you're dealing with nuclear weapons, and it's barely even, like, dealt with. It just sort of happens, and then we move on.
I mean, I think Dark Phoenix is even worse, because it's set in the 90s and that doesn't try to do anything. Obviously, a lot of the oomph from First Class and Days of Future Past came from it feeling like it's part of the real world, part of like the real world politics that we're watching this like sci-fi alternate history take place. To just be like, oh yeah, we just wanted to have, Walkmans and Pac-Man and stuff. I'm like, well, that's...
Shoulder pads.
That's not really what you need for the X-Men. Like, There's one scene where I think they play on the Cold War element that I would have dug a little bit more, but it's just kind of blah.
Well, and honestly, if they wanted to do that, like, they've already set the stage. I mean, you can hear them say they know exactly what they have done. They set the stage with a movie about the Cuban Missile Crisis. So they know that they're setting this expectation, and to not go into the Cold War and all of that is a mistake. But even if they did decide that they just wanted to play with the 80s, why didn't they play with the 80s? There's no style. There's no, I mean, they even talk about the color. Like, I guess technically they wear more colors, but I mean, directing and like, whatever with like visual stuff, like they do nothing. And anytime that there is anything, it's mostly just costumes, and they're nauseating. There's so much nostalgia for the 80s. There has been since like the late 90s, and we just like, we all know what we like about the 80s, and they don't give us that. They give us just like Magnum PI, and that's it.
Late 90s. Yeah, I'm thinking like The Wedding Singer, but there had to be something before that was like, no, we missed the 80s. I mean, I'm sure 80s nostalgia hit as soon as 1990 hit.
Yeah.
I remember it being a big deal with Adam Sandler's Wedding Singer.
Oh, yeah.
Him and Drew Barrymore. That was like, with all the Billy Idol stuff and like all the, like, do you like The Flock of Seagulls? I have some stuff about Oscar Isaac in retrospect. So this was...
Is this before or after Star Wars?
This movie?
With Oscar Isaac.
This is after Force Awakens. Force Awakens had come out December 2015.
Okay.
So Oscar Isaac did one of those GQ videos where he talks about his roles, movie by movie. And X-Men Apocalypse came up. He's not... he's not necessarily mean about the movie, but he says, X-Men Apocalypse, that was excruciating.
Oh.
I didn't know when I said yes that was what was going to be happening. That I was going to be encased in glue, latex, in a 40-pound suit, that I had to wear a cooling mechanism at all times. I couldn't move my head ever. He had been excited to be in the movie, to act alongside James McAvoy, Michael Fassbender, Jennifer Lawrence. He said he couldn't even see his co-stars because of the outfit that he was wearing.
Man.
He said I couldn't move my head, and I had to sit on a special design saddle because that's the only thing I could really sit on, and I would be rolled into a cooling tent in between takes.
Oh my gosh.
And so I just wouldn't ever talk to anybody, and I was just going to be sitting, and I couldn't really move, and like sweating inside the mask and helmet. Getting it off was the worst part because they just had to kind of scrape it off for hours and hours. So that was X-Men Apocalypse.
Wow. I feel so bad for him.
Well, I'm sure he got paid for his troubles.
Well, sure, but
listen, if you want to wheel me out and then have me yell a bunch of lines in an X-Men movie and pay me however much you paid Oscar, I'll do it, and I probably won't complain about the situation.
I don't know that you need all of that to pull off an apocalypse look.
And so, like, yeah, a lot of times with these big budget movies, you're like, yeah, I want to work with that actor, and then you just never see them. You're never on screen. Kevin Bacon did one of those videos where he talks about his stuff, and he said the best part of that movie for him was the scene with him versus Magneto at the end, because it was one of the few scenes where he got to actually interact with somebody. All right, John Ottman is back as the composer.
I didn't notice the music, did you?
Yes.
You always notice the music.
Thank you.
I never noticed. Like, it just doesn't even cross my mind.
I put that on my dating profiles.
I always notice the music.
I like walks on beach, and I always notice the music in movies.
You know what? That's not bad.
Yeah. Wow, I bet he owns some of the soundtracks on CD. I do. Before we get on to the release of this movie, when it came out and stuff, let's talk about Bryan Singer.
Let's!
So we talked about it with Days of Future Past. For me, I hadn't heard any of the Bryan Singer accusations until X-Men Days of Future Past was in production. I don't know if maybe I was too young when the first two X-Men movies were happening to be picking up on that stuff, but I just don't remember hearing that, though obviously when you look at the history and stuff, there were accusations happening long before that. But I remember it with Days of Future Past, that information was coming about Bryan Singer. Sexual misconduct seems like a very conservative description of the things he...
Is this like this is definitely what happened, or is this like rumors, or what's the situation here?
I don't know. I don't know if anything has been settled either in or out of court. There's been accusations, but studios have not picked up on it, because after all this, after Apocalypse and after Bohemian Rhapsody, he was still offered to direct Red Sonja, a female action comic book film. And people were like, what the crap? And so then he was removed from that afterwards. But it just shows, like, it's ridiculous how long any of this takes to get results, both in Hollywood and out of Hollywood. It's so frustrating.
Sure is.
This is me not being one of the victims, so I can't imagine. With Apocalypse, it felt kind of like a fever pitch. I think between Apocalypse and then Bohemian Rhapsody, for sure, it was a big deal. At one point, he didn't show up to film, and Simon Kinberg had to film some of the scenes. He later said it was a thyroid issue, but this is a thing that had happened before in X-Men 2, and it's a thing that he just stopped showing up to Bohemian Rhapsody, so they had to fire him and get somebody else to come in and finish the movie.
Ugh.
Um,
I just don't understand. I don't understand the culture of these studios
that
where
just
they
keep
find
rewarding it.
these
Yeah.
people and they're just like, yeah, we're locked in with this guy no
Mm-hmm.
matter what happens. If he's bad at his job, too bad.
Yep.
If he abuses people, whatever. Like, they just lock it. How many people are there in the world who are skilled, talented artist
Yeah.
directors and they can do it and they just don't give them a shot
You
because
know,
they've got this name that they want to keep going and going and going no matter what a
how hard I can't.
person
It's
he is.
when you can get your screenwriter to come in and direct your movie because your director hasn't shown up, then maybe it's not worth paying this auteur director who's doing all these other things.
There's an extent to which the director matters. I mean, you have like, Steven Spielberg, that matters. But if you have like an established like series of movies that people continually come back to,
Mm-hmm.
and you have James McAvoy and you have Jennifer Lawrence and
Mm-hmm.
people that people want to watch,
Mm-hmm.
why are you entangling yourself with someone who is so intensely problematic? Like, why do
Yeah.
they keep doing it?
And
What
I
does
don't
that
think the
meeting
general
look like?
audience cares if it says Bryan Singer's X. No, I mean X-Men: The Last Stand was the highest grossing of those three films, and that was Ratner. Logan and Deadpool are spin-offs, and those are higher grossing than the X-Men films in a lot of ways. It's just
What if we just had more female directors?
it's frustrating because I 100% understand now if people have just been like, I liked the X-Men movies, but I'm not watching them anymore because of Singer. I
Yeah.
can't, I get it. It's tainted all the Singer. I mean, X-Men 2 and Days of Future Past. The first one, it's sad because
It's sad.
it's sad
Well, you're
for the
watching.
victims. It's sad for the art.
Assuming he actually was in the room and doing the directing for some of these movies, you're watching his art. You're
Yeah.
watching what he has accomplished.
Yeah.
And if he's a dick, maybe you don't want to enjoy that.
It's frustrating. Part of me feels like the message in the X-Men movies is stronger than Singer, but at the same time, the X-Men do have a message, and that's the other thing. Like, this isn't just like, a fun superhero character who fights supervillains, and that's the thing. Like, it's not a Batman Forever situation. This is a superhero property that's long known to have a message of tolerance and respect and dealing with a lot of broken people, a lot of outsiders, the dispossessed, minorities, and then you have someone like Singer who he's using this message to
Using his power to abuse people.
Yeah. And so I mean these movies will now forever have that. This is the last movie he directed. I remember when he said he wasn't coming back, it felt kind of like it was his choice. So we'll never know. I mean, he did go on then to do Bohemian Rhapsody, which made $1 billion. But again,
Let's just hire people who aren't terrible.
Sophie Turner, talking about her time with this, she says, and I think this is the only quote you have of her, says, "Our time together was, like Rami said, unpleasant." Rami Malek talking about how Bohemian Rhapsody was an unpleasant experience. So this came when she was filming Dark Phoenix, and I know him and Halle Berry had some scuffles because of his not coming to work and stuff. So
Just do your job, man. Come on.
I don't know. Like, as a director, if Halle Berry's yelling at me, I'd be like, you know what? I gotta work this out. I don't want Halle Berry to be mad at me.
I don't want that.
Anyway, so I guess that's what we'll say with Bryan Singer. Not being the accusers or knowing everything that's going on in terms of like the legal battles. There's not much more to say other than we're very much aware of it. I feel like we've brought it up each time.
Yeah.
But there's only so much I feel even comfortable talking about because I don't want to seem dismissive either. So
we don't know the details. We don't want to speak for people, but we're certainly disappointed that he has to be a part of the discussion at all.
Yeah. Luckily for Hilary, she doesn't even like this movie.
It's true.
She doesn't even have to defend the art.
Yes! Oh, I love it. I could just be like, and then Bryan Singer made the stupid decision to do this.
So X-Men Apocalypse was released on May 27th, 2016, just 3 months after Deadpool.
Really?
2 years after Days of Future Past. The turnaround.
2 years. Wow.
Yeah. It used to be, was it 3? Yeah, it was a 3-year turnaround between the sequels. This one, I think because they wanted to do it right after Days of Future Past, they
Yeah, I remember
it.
it feeling like a quick turnaround.
Yeah. No,
but I also feel like having it that close after Deadpool also kind of undercut it a little bit. It felt sort of like it was slipped in.
If people are riding high off this like wacky spin-off that's unlike the other films, then this one almost feels like the traditional one. Like, oh, you watch X-Men Apocalypse? I'd rather watch Deadpool's balls. So
let's just cut that. Let's cut that phrase that you just said and just like put that on at the end.
Yeah, put that on the DVD Blu-ray copy of Deadpool.
I just want I can't even say it.
X-Men Apocalypse had a budget of $178 million. And
which is a lot or not a lot?
I mean, I think it's less than Days of Future Past. I could be wrong. It's pretty high. I think these big budget movies are getting to the 200 plus. I have been in the 200 plus for a while now. Unfortunately, it made $155 million domestically here in North America.
Ugh.
Putting it below even the first X-Men movie in terms of grosses. First X-Men movie had made $157 million domestically, and that was the first movie in 2000. However, it was saved by the international box offices.
That often happens, doesn't it?
Specifically, a very large take in China. And so its worldwide total went from the 155 million here in North America to 542 million worldwide. And,
hey, Eric.
Yeah?
Remember when we used to go see movies?
Yeah. Yeah. And then we had our own X-Men Apocalypse. With that, it makes it the 5th highest grossing X-Men movie, according to the numbers. But, okay, so this is it worldwide. Yeah, it's the 5th highest grossing X-Men movie. But I know you don't like to count the Deadpool movies.
Yeah.
So worldwide, it's actually behind, if you don't count the Deadpool movies, it's Days of Future Past, Logan, and then Apocalypse.
What?
Yeah.
Ugh, that's disgusting.
So, and that means if you decide Logan's a spin-off and doesn't count, it's the 2nd highest grossing of these.
Is that a thing? Do you think Logan is a spin-off?
I mean, the Wolverine movies are spin-offs, but I count them. I count all of them.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, like, if you're counting just, like, the X-Men movies, X-Men in the title, then it's the 2nd X-Men in title thing. But again, Days of Future Past and X-Men Apocalypse, much different movie-going environment in 2016 and 2014 than when the first X-Men movie had come out. You know, the audience is now jazzed and primed for superhero movies. This is a known property and all that stuff. I think it's a different situation. So at the same time, 542, this was discussed when it came out and it made that money, that it was saved from being a flop because of the international box office.
Yeah.
But when your movie only makes 155 in North America, that's still not a good sign. Like, you made a profit, but it doesn't bode well for the future, as we'll see in future films. So I guess maybe this is where I'll just talk about my little rant here.
Okay.
Days of Future Past, the sequel, so this X-Men Apocalypse film, it should have been the classic trilogy cast. I don't care how much it would have cost to get Hugh Jackman and Famke Janssen and Patrick Stewart and all of them back. I don't care how hard it would have been to get Halle Berry and Fraser Crane to come back to the X-Men movies. But Days of Future Past did not make $700+ million because people like Fassbender and McAvoy and Jennifer Lawrence. They came because it felt like a nostalgic reunion for the original trilogies, which were the movies that made the most money. First Class made $146 million here in North America. People it's just one of those things where, like, people like X-Men, but they like the X-Men movies that they had seen.
Yeah.
And which had characters.
It could have been a window back into that.
Yeah, you could have just done it because now we have the characters back in a place where we'd want to see them. And like Jean and Scott are back. Hopefully some lessons have been learned, but maybe not. And we could just go with those casts. And now we're back into the present. You don't have to explain weird age gaps or appearances. You don't have to set them during the 80s but not do anything. It's just it seems like, I don't know, it not creative suicide, but it seems like fiscal suicide to look at the box office things and be like, all right, now let's keep going with the cast nobody cares about and bring in even more people they don't recognize.
Yeah, it is a weird choice when it's such an obvious distinction and such a good arc. Like it could have, like the way it plays is sort of that you get like a little epilogue and like you send the original cast into the sunset. That works in its own way if you then do a good movie. But yeah, like you could end up with a nice good arc,
right?
Where you have like it's the original cast, everybody likes them. You have kind of a flashback time. And then you come back to the present. That's a nice arc.
Yeah. And then you don't even have to bring back Ian McKellen if you don't want to pay his salary, because now you can move on to other villains.
No, you can't. You can't move on to other villains. You can't do one of these X-Men movies without Magneto. It's not possible.
I mean, they must have just figured it's cheaper to keep the actors they have here, and it would be, but I don't think it's worth it in the long run. And in the long run, they got bought by Disney. So,
Congratulations.
That's my studio critique. My very like cynical do it for the money critique. You made a
it works as an arc too. It doesn't have to just be
how jazzed would people like you and I have been if they were doing like now a full X-Men movie with the cast back from the first 3 movies. That would have been so exciting. And maybe we finally get like a Rogue being Rogue and all that stuff now, because like this movie, they're trying to be like, look, we're more comic booky than we've ever been. And then like with those other characters who are like premier characters, they would feel like slightly the right age now, because Anna Paquin and Shawn Ashmore had gotten older. You know, everyone would kind of look the way you'd want them to look age-wise. They got Kelsey Grammer back for that quick cameo, and he said that he enjoyed playing Beast and he would have come back. I'm getting frustrated. X-Men Apocalypse has a Rotten Tomatoes score at the time of recording of 47% for critics, 65% for audience. So the audience is being a little kind there.
I guess so.
You want me to read the consensus?
Sure.
Overloaded action and a cliche villain take the focus away from otherwise strong performers and resonant themes, making X-Men Apocalypse a middling chapter of the venerable superhero franchise, which I feel like is still a bit kind.
Middling is generous.
Cliche villain is generous.
Yeah. It'd be nice if he was as recognizable and meaningful as a cliche.
Okay. Hilary, when did you see X-Men Apocalypse? You know what? I know when you saw X-Men Apocalypse.
You do?
Yeah, because I had seen it with my wife. I think we had gone Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon. We had gone to see X-Men Apocalypse in theaters, like the opening weekend, because I was jazzed for it. The trailers had come out and everything, and we're fine. But I was still riding high from Days of Future Past, because that's what happens. I ride high from the previous film, and then the next film is like, So that's what happened. And then you and Nick asked us to come over and babysit for you guys so that you could then go see X-Men Apocalypse.
Yep.
And
so we saw it in the theaters.
So history-wise, I don't know if you remember this, I was pretty jazzed by the film. And coming out of it, I was aware of some of its problems, but I was kind of like, all right, I'm in it. I'm good. And you came back and you were grumpy because of this movie.
Yeah. I remember that very well. I remember very well you liking the movie and me being like, you're stupid. This was a terrible movie.
Yeah, we weren't friends between 2016 and 2018 because of opening weekend of X-Men Apocalypse. Yeah. It's like, you know what? I'm not talking to you anymore, and I'm never doing a podcast with you. Then I
Little did we know at the time.
Yeah. I had only saw it the once in theaters. I assume the same for you.
Yeah. And I remember watching it. I remember sitting there and like being cautiously excited, and then just sitting there and being like, "What is happening? This is awful. This is awful.
Just sinking more and more into your chair."
And watching it this time, I think I had sort of a similar experience because it started, and I was like, okay, this is fine. Am I just being a stick in the mud about this?
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually I was like, oh,
You've
no,
given
I
it
was right.
multiple shots before, right? You've seen it at least once before
At least
doing
once, yeah.
this.
I think maybe just once.
I have watched it a couple of times between opening weekend and now. 2, 3 times? I'm not sure. It's hard for me to talk about why I enjoyed it without just getting into the movie, because some things I enjoy less now. So I guess as we go, I'll talk about the things I enjoyed, and you can just assume I was jazzed by that when I first saw it, and now I'm a bit more hesitant these days. But we'll see. I don't know. Well, we'll get to the end and see how we feel. Oh, I should get the IMDb up so I can say that actor is this person.
That would be helpful. See, that rundown that you just gave, I feel like is a pretty good one, aside from it being generous, because I think that they're right about, for the most part, not completely, for the most part, they're being good performers being trapped in an utterly nonsensical movie.
Yeah, they don't say good performances. They say there's
I know.
strong
Yeah,
performers.
It's a really, yep, not performances, performers.
Hilary, the movie starts and the X symbol stays.
It lingers.
Yep, they decide to let it linger.
I wrote that down.
And the Ottman theme that John Ottman does, the theme from X-Men 2, really blares in as like the fanfare.
Mm-hmm.
The which I like that. Da 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 da.
And then is this when you have the voiceover?
Yeah, McAvoy doing the whole like mutants have, or like.
But it's like on half speed or something. He's like mutants.
Hilary, I think something's wrong with your Blu-ray player.
No, it's weird.
Did you watch the whole?
Listen to it again.
Was the whole movie like a 4.5-hour film for you? Because it's not supposed to be that way.
Yeah, is it not? No, okay. No, listen to it again. It's like his voice is like weirdly deep. I don't know if he's like trying to be melodramatic or something,
you think
but
they maybe modded him or something.
I don't know. It's
Modulated
weird.
him. This intro is one of like the least exciting intro speeches of any of these movies.
Yeah, oh yes.
Like how do you go back from evolution has taken us, but to this one, it's just like, what happens if mutants were like, so say you could take it in like a biblical perspective, okay? So what if we were mutants but people thought of us as gods, but now also in the future we're lost? What is that? Like, what is that?
It's just like a stream of consciousness from Bryan Singer being like, so let's think about this, man.
Yeah. Xavier's
and then performed by McAvoy.
This is now Xavier waking up from a bad dream and writing down in his dream journal.
Yes.
Dear Dream Journal, what if mutants needed a father?
Oh my gosh.
Are we the bastards of mankind in evolution?
This is genius. I'm going to write a book.
Listen, bastards of mankind in evolution. I don't hate it. Stream of consciousness. It kind of works. Put me in front of these things. Yeah, but then it's interesting because, I know it's not interesting. It's weird because it doesn't then cut to like a thing that relates to that.
Yeah.
So anyway, that should give you a sign of maybe a confused perspective this film is going to have.
Mm-hmm. Ancient Egypt.
Apocalypse is like old and decrepit looking. He's transferring his consciousness his consciousness to a body that has a healing ability, which makes you wonder.
So here's my initial thought as this was happening was, first of all, so I guess he exchanges his consciousness, and this is a characteristic of Apocalypse that I was unaware of. But then after that, I was thinking, so Apocalypse is the first mutant. This is a whole big thing, but his whole thing is to switch bodies with other mutants that apparently exist.
Oh, looks like he's got the power of loopholes as well.
I guess.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot. I mean, when he says like I've lived lifetimes. So maybe he's supposed to have been doing this long before ancient Egypt, because like
even before ancient Egypt.
When he says he's been living lifetimes, we're in Egypt, but then he gets knocked out and like put in stasis until 1980. So
yeah,
he hasn't lived lifetimes. He lived a lifetime and then he was in stasis. So like if this had been like an apocalypse that had been there in Egypt, and then he's like, also I'm the fall of Rome, also I and the Black Plague, also, all this stuff, but it doesn't really. My ancient history knowledge doesn't go much beyond or much further back than ancient Egypt when it comes to like civilizations. So like, are we talking like the Babylonians for him as well? Are we talking, like the Persian empires? But isn't that all around like contemporary or even after. So
Well, yeah, and I guess I feel like the whole point of putting him in ancient Egypt is that that's the start of his living for a long time.
But he has 4 horsemen of the apocalypse who are mutants. He has all these powers, which are mutant powers that he gained. Yep. So it's just a regular occurrence. So he's one of the first mutants, we guess.
I guess so, which is a lot less impressive, isn't it?
It's so fun. There are people who have pointed out, like, if Apocalypse is the first mutant, shouldn't he just have, like, webbed hands? Like, shouldn't
why is his mutation, like, the best mutation?
Right out of the gate. Shouldn't it just be like, oh no, I have a kind of 6 finger. It's more like an extra 6 finger, but, it's not imposable.
Isn't the first mutant, like, the beginning of evolution?
Nope, the first mutant is him like, I'm God!
I am literally God.
Yep.
Okay, let me just say one thing about this scene. Mm-hmm. Setting aside that it is not Apocalypse's story and that none of that time stuff makes any sense, I kind of do like the scene. I like the stuff with the guys planning his downfall and those things, those elements of it, I think are interesting. And like them signaling to each other and like locking him in. I think that's an interesting
I actually also weirdly enjoy the opening action scene, like with the his horsemen at the beginning just doing things. I mean, they're just kind of nameless, wordless mooks, but like it's just kind of like quick and I don't know, nothing's explained, so like things are just happening, and it just maybe it's because it's the Egyptian setting, like that ancient Egyptian setting that makes it as exciting as it seems too. It's not emotionally compelling, but like visually and everything, it's a fun scene.
Yeah, and I like the concept of them successfully defeating this powerful being. Like that they've been planning this whole time, and they actually do it. And I like how there are a couple of them who just sacrifice themselves. Like the whole plan is that they're going to lock themselves in with Apocalypse, and they're just going to die, but that's just what they're going to do because he's a despot.
That one horseman, the woman who's like encasing him in his
my gosh,
his armor
like
and everything
while she's dying,
she is committed. I don't understand that type of commitment to someone like Apocalypse, but there it is. Because then she just gets crushed.
We'll talk a little bit later, I think, about why people follow him because
maybe that's one of his powers. So I guess this is supposed to also be kind of a preview that things are bigger than they've been in the past. But I mean, Days of Future Past had robots.
Yeah. See, exactly. I don't see it.
All right. It then cuts to the swirly whirly opening credits thing that we're used to with the X-Men films. But
I hate this one.
I hate this one. It's so cheesy.
It's so cheesy. And I think they're trying, like with the imagery, I think that they're trying to look stylized, but it just looks cheap.
So I guess they're trying to show us how long Apocalypse has been, like it's a history thing, like this is Apocalypse through the ages, but he hasn't been. He's just been in stasis through this.
Right.
So like we know the difference between ancient Egyptian society and 1980s America. You don't have to like show us like, oh, and then we invented steam engines? I don't know.
How did we get from there to here?
It does. It seems cheesy. It seems weird for an X-Men movie, but at the same, like that John Ottman score is so exciting. But it doesn't save. I remember the first time I saw it, I'm like, oh, and then there's coins, and then it's just like, it's strange, especially because this film again isn't dealing with the history of the 80s.
Right.
If any movie,
it's not dealing with any history. Like all you have is Apocalypse feels like he's a god.
Yeah.
And like if you're gonna use the history and him being there for so long and impacting civilizations and stuff as why he thinks that, then sure, reference the history. But that's not why, because he's just lying there. He's just, a sociopath who thinks that he's that important for apparently no good reason because he hasn't been influencing anything. So who cares? Just let him be a sociopath.
I think it kind of shows like the lack of commitment to the setting of this film. And you have that, because if you really wanted to make this in the 80s and you're like, we're doing it for the style and everything, this thing would be purple and bright and have like an 80s vibe to it. Or maybe you have like the blue encasement of Apocalypse's outfit and something to go along with the look of the horsemen. Anything. But just be like trains, planes, automobiles. It's just like...
It's just a straight style. There's nothing interesting about it.
It's so strange. Because if it had been like, let's do a quick, like how X-Men Origins did, let's do a quick, like, Apocalypse Through the Ages kind of thing. They can't do that. I don't get it. It's very cheesy, and not in a fun, cheesy way. Like you would expect from the 80s.
From an 80s thing,
all right, this Cyclops opening scene thing, it's recycled from like multiple things now. We saw it before,
and it's not interesting to begin with. Like, we don't need to see it again. We didn't really need to see it ever. I mean, it's just Cyclops being a brat in school and blasting stuff.
We saw it in X-Men Origins Wolverine, where he had to like stay behind in class and write on the board, and then Sabretooth showed up. But this was a cut scene. The cut scene from X-Men, it's in the novelization of the first X-Men movie, is that Cyclops is at a dance and it's going wrong, but it's still like the same bathroom setting at the end where he's like people are banging on the walls and he blasted. So it's just like they pulled something out from 16 years ago to do it, but I don't know. Like, we know who Cyclops is,
right?
And even when before he uses his power, we know who he is.
I think they think it's interesting that he's not like a golden child, but you know what? It's not.
But the thing
I don't care.
We don't really learn about him being not a golden child. We don't learn much about that from this opening classroom school setting. It could have just gone to like Havoc his parents bringing him to school, and we wouldn't have lost any character development.
Yeah, because he's kind of a sullen, like...
He has that line where the guy's like, you eyeball my girl? He's like, your girl? I guess you're old enough to be his father. I'm like, burn? Cyclops? Good one? You really taught this freshman college-age looking guy that he looks... Yeah, burn. Anyway.
This is the beginning, I think, of an entire movie that is made up of unnecessary scenes. It's just... The entire thing is cobbled together scenes that I guess technically come together to make a movie.
Do we cut directly?
This movie could have been half the length, is what I'm saying.
Well, it could have been shorter for sure. Oh my word, this is a long one. It's 2 hours and 20 minutes. I mean, X-Men 2 is, but I don't feel like X-Men 2 has a lot of fat to it. Neither does Days of Future Past. But this
one is just fat. It's only fat.
We cut directly to Berlin.
Yep, and we get a lot of nice female objectification right out of the gate. Nice. Excellent.
This is one of the only scenes in this movie that's like, we're in the 80s, it's the Cold War, and the 80s has a style of music and dress and all that, and then like the movie really forgets about that. But like, I feel like this movie has a better sense of what you could do.
Yeah.
By setting it in the 80s.
It has, like, you got Jennifer Lawrence's crazy perm and everything, and it's like what they could have done, now that I'm just thinking about this, is this is like grunge 80s. And then maybe you get to the mansion and you get like the Magnum PI 80s. And like just seeing all the different styles, but no.
This is definitely the punk rock 80s. But again, we're in Berlin, the wall at this time of setting the story, the wall's still up. So you've got.
Did they mention that? Did they delve into that at all?
Don't mention.
Okay. Just wondering.
But you have this underground like mutant fighting ring going on. You have Mystique, who's in a role that I think tracks for the character of Mystique. Even in the comics, you don't have to then like be like, now she's gonna teach the X-Men. But like in this setting, this is a cool direction to take Mystique because she's more of an anti-hero, but you can still play up on the villainous tendencies if you wanted, where she's like helping mutants who are out there. She later says to Xavier, there are still mutants out there who aren't at the mansion, who aren't safe, and the rest of the world hasn't been won over. And so like she's there, shutting down this ring, getting Nightcrawler to safety. Like, that's cool. That's a cool.
Yeah, I do like that as a place for her to be in. I would like it if she would just stay in that kind of a position.
Yeah, it seems like a fun, I don't know, if you were to
It works with her style-wise, like, just from taking a step back and looking at her character, it makes sense. Yeah. It also makes sense if you look at the trajectory of her emotional journey, like for her to, like, she's attached to Xavier, he betrays her from her perspective. She's attached to Magneto, he betrays her, and so she's just going to do her own thing, and she's going to be isolated. She's not going to attach to anybody. This is a good place for her to land.
But we see Blob. Blob is there very quickly.
Yeah. Haven't we seen him before?
Yeah, he was in X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Oh, okay.
So I guess this tracks because Origins Wolverine is supposed to be set in the 80s, as far as I understand it.
Okay.
But yeah, this is Blob. He's got like the classic comic. No way on earth does regular Angel, with his wings, his feather wings, beat the Blob.
Well, they really like tough him up. Yeah, I think probably because he's the most recognizable of the horsemen.
Sure.
And so I understand them wanting to use him, and they probably just want him to be, tougher.
They give
him those like talons.
Yeah, his wings. I don't think I've ever seen that before, like the talons on the ends of the wings. But no way does Angel beat Blob. Pick another different mutant for Angel to beat.
Right, any other mutant. There's lots.
But yeah, Angel and Nightcrawler fight. We got a new Nightcrawler who is, I guess I should have said it. Cyclops is being played by Ty Sheridan. This new Kurt Wagner is Cody Smith McPhee.
I don't mind his Nightcrawler. I think he's fine. I don't think he brings anything sparkly to it, but, he's fine.
I imagine he's doing the best he can with what he's given.
Yeah.
With Nightcrawler and both this and Dark Phoenix. I don't know. I've only seen Dark Phoenix once because of this podcast we've been doing. So I don't know if I can say nicer things about Ty Sheridan, but he does not really land it with Cyclops in this. Either as the bad boy or when he's not being the bad boy. Yeah, Cody Smith McPhee is fine. And Angel is being played by who I thought I had recognized this actor, but I didn't at all.
Yeah, he does seem sort of recognizable.
Ben Hardy is the actor who's playing Angel. He was in Bohemian Rhapsody, so that must be it. Maybe he was the drummer? He played
I haven't seen that, so I don't know.
Roger Taylor. Oh, gosh, he was in Six Underground? Oh, and he was the parkour character. Listen, I'm not going to do it, but I hate Six Underground. I'm not going to explain everything because it gets me mad. I hated it, speaking of Michael Bay. But anyway, poor Angel's wings, they get zapped to shreds in this.
Yeah. It's the end for him.
So,
or is it?
But yeah, I like the whole style of this Berlin Fight Club.
Yeah, I think this could work. This is sort of the period where I'm like, maybe I misjudged this because I get it, and I like following her, following Mystique as she's like helping them and then like taking them to this other underground with Caliban, and I like that.
Well, unlike the Cyclops scene that we just saw, this has a bit more style and way more momentum.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
And also, I guess it's just for us, it's Mystique and Nightcrawler.
Yeah.
To get that.
Yeah, and they didn't do anything with it.
No. Which is because she did join Magneto's Brotherhood in the end of First Class, who had Azazel, who is Nightcrawler's father. But yeah, I mean, that would just get... I can understand why they don't want to talk about it, but at the same time...
it's there.
Cut to an old-fashioned blue-collar Magneto who just wants to do his job and come home to pies baking on the windowsill, tuck his daughter in, sing her songs, tell her sad stories about his past, and
here we have the second scene that is entirely unnecessary. Now listen, I like Magneto in this position. I think it's interesting to see. I think he does a good job. I think you have a lot of pathos, but I don't think it's remotely necessary for this movie, primarily because I don't think Magneto is remotely necessary for this movie.
You've said it before. Cut Magneto from this, bring him back in Dark Phoenix. It has oomph.
100%.
For me, I just cut him out after Days of Future Past. I don't. We'll talk about it with Dark Phoenix, but I wouldn't bring him in Dark Phoenix at all. Period. So like this would be the last time I'd see him in this, because I get it. You have Magneto as a character. You have Fassbender as an actor. You have a character who needs to collect at least 4 bad, kind of powerful minions. I get the appeal of making him the Horseman of the Apocalypse. But
that I don't get at all.
Really?
I do not get having Magneto as a horseman at all. Because the entire point of having these horsemen is that you have characters that Apocalypse then elevates to be villains. So taking a top-level villain and inserting him in there and having him just, work for another villain doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't make any sense. And it doesn't change him enough. Like, all he is in this entire movie is a prop.
Yeah, how's it feel?
Like, you don't
how's it feel, Magneto? That's what you did to Jean in X-Men 3. Doesn't feel so good.
Doesn't feel so good. But yeah, it just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, you have Storm, who we haven't seen yet. That's an interesting idea to like just use this to bring her in. You have Angel, which just, who cares about Angel until he's Archangel? Well, yeah. And then you have
some people cared about Psylocke, Warren.
Probably. Then you have Psylocke, who also is a newer character. We don't know anything about her. This is fine to like bring her in.
Good news.
On that level. And then you have Magneto, who has been in every single movie. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Even like a tiny little bit of sense. No sense. It could have just been any other character. And for the things that he does, it could be anybody. It doesn't matter that it's Magneto at the end. It could be anybody.
Yeah. Could be Wolverine.
It could be nobody. It could just be Psylocke doing some magic thing,
well, like fourth person. It can't be the 3 horsemen of the apocalypse.
Yes, you need the 4th person, but it could be any given mutant from the entire universe.
It's true. You could have had a Gambit in there.
Sure.
You could have had a Mara. You could have had a lot of characters that haven't showed up yet.
Yeah, and then at the end, you could have it be Storm who's ruining the entire planet. She has that capacity, and then that's interesting because you haven't seen her before.
But then you'd have to use Storm, and Singer and Kinberg don't care about that. Mine is just stop using Magneto post Days of Future Past, especially if you had done with the original cast. Just do not bring Magneto back.
All they need to do is have a Magneto movie, and then have some movies that don't have him, and then have
First
him
Class.
Back,
That's as Magneto movie as we've ever needed. I think. I feel like after First Class, you have your Magneto movie.
I think you're right.
But I get their appeal. Like if you like working with but then you don't give Fassbender really any scenes.
It's just so lazy. All it is lazy. It's just them being like, Magneto's cool, let's use him. You're not trying to like work with what actually would benefit the movie.
My brain turns off. Like I like Magneto and I like Fassbender and I get the scenes of him, but like it's so 100% what's going to happen to his family. There's no mystery or fear.
Isn't it nice that he moves to Poland or wherever and just lives happily ever after?
It's so like there's just that. So we're just going through the motions for that. And also, like the Age of Ultron farm scene, my brain just kind of turns off.
Yeah.
During all these scenes because I'm like, they're so long because they're filmed like, look how arty this scene is. Anyway, Havoc shows up because he's Cyclops' 40-year-old brother.
Yeah, man.
Maybe 37.
In this are just baffling. Baffling.
It's supposed to be a 10-year gap, I think, between each one. So we're looking at because it was like 1963, so then 1973. Now we're in 1983. Is that right? Is that when Return of the Jedi came out?
I don't know. But it's so confusing because they do talk about it. They talk about how long it has been.
He's his brother. Yeah, he's his 40-year-old brother. I
mean, how hard is it, honestly? Like, you don't have to like age his face, but the way they dress him is not obviously an old person. Like, give him some glasses or something.
I think he has the MacGyver hairstyle right now in this movie.
Yeah, but like that's popular at the time.
Yeah, if any actor should look like he's from the 80s, it should be the one who's playing MacGyver on TV at the moment.
Right.
I didn't even think about that. Oh my gosh.
Oh, that's so stupid. So then Scott and Jean meet for the first time. Boy, is this stupid.
It is a rough first convo. Like, what is this pacing between her, like, saying the thing in her head? Like, watch it. And then him be like, what? Who said that? She's like, I heard you in my head. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And then it's that whole like they don't like each other to begin with. Like that's interesting.
But it's
like,
not.
Just if you're gonna do it at all, just let them be intrigued by each other and move on. Or also just don't do it because it's very
like
dumb.
They don't like each other because they're both jerks. Like her
yes!
Who's the first one to say watch it? Is it Cyclops?
Oh, I don't remember. But they're both just rude and like unlikable.
He's new, so this is how he's starting it, and this is how she's treating it. I mean, I feel like it was Cyclops who said it first, who said something like, watch where you're going, loser. I'm the new guy. But
Also, why isn't Alex stepping in at all? Like his brother is blind right now. So why isn't Alex like, hey, calm down. We're getting in here.
How does the telepath telekinetic not know to bump into people?
Good question. Yeah. And that thing where she drops her papers and then like brings them back. Yeah. I don't know. Like that should be cool, but there's just something very like contrived about it. It doesn't like she's carrying her books and she dropped her books and I don't know. I just the whole thing.
There must be more than this provincial life.
And again, feels completely unnecessary to me.
This is Sophie Turner as Jean Grey, who most people will know from Game of Thrones.
Yes, which I've never seen, so she means nothing to me.
She means nothing.
She means nothing. And I remember really, really not liking her as Jean the first time. This time I kind of liked her.
It's, again, one of those things where I think in a different movie director focus. But yeah, I like her as Jean. I think she actually kind of looks the part, too, in a way that maybe Famke Janssen never really, like... I never thought that Famke Janssen was a page-to-screen... Jean Grey kind of transfer, but I feel like Sophie Turner has the comic book Jean Grey look a little bit more.
I think she does, and I think that she carries herself in a way that I think sells the like tumultuous underbelly that's happening pretty well. Like she hardly has any lines that like give her that, but I think there's something about how she carries herself that
too bad there's only one story you can ever do with Jean Grey, but there we are. All right, and we also have Jubilee. We see Jubilee at one point being taught. We'll have more scenes with her. That's Lana Condor, who more recently has been in the To All the Boys I Loved Before and the P.S. I Love You Netflix show. It's based off of a young adult series. Okay. And she was also in Alita Battle Angel, which I liked and my wife hated.
I feel like I would just agree with your wife.
Okay.
I haven't seen it, but I trust her, you know? There's just something about her.
Know what cracked me up about this scene, though? Xavier's teaching. He's just spinning around in his chair, reading a book and everything, but then he meets Cyclops, so he has to end class. He says, taught marks, everybody. And I'm like, he's always giving taught marks. It's just nonstop. He's always
and also, that line is just like, I'm British. Just look at how British I am. Top marks all around. Yep. I want to continue that scene. I want to, like, you walk in and he's spinning in a circle. And I just want to see if Scott doesn't walk in, he just keeps spinning and spinning. I mean, like, he would just fall out of his chair. Like, that is not a reasonable way to be teaching at all.
Hey, cut to Moira. She's back from the first movie. Rose Byrne.
She's Indiana Jones.
She is Indiana Jones. Because she was CIA. Or she is still CIA. So she wasn't in Days of Future Past, but they brought her back for Apocalypse, which I thought was cool. Yeah. You know what's interesting? Nobody else is given age makeup. But Rose Byrne is given age makeup.
What? Why?
Isn't that ridiculous?
That's weird. Isn't she the oldest one? Like the actor?
I mean, is she older than Fassbender and
not Fassbender
and McAvoy? Why is Rose Byrne having to be aged up, but Xavier can still have like those luscious locks at the beginning?
Oh,
it's so strange. It's like no, time has passed. It's been 20 years.
Just give her bangs.
So she has gray hair and she's kind of wearing those gross 80s office clothes. It's just Anyway, she's Indiana Jones. I guess she's exploring the not Imhotep. Wait. Ensenada. Boy, you think I'd be able to say...
Ensabanur.
Yeah, Ensabanur. Imhotep is the mummy. Anyway, she finds a cult of people worshipping Apocalypse, wanting to bring him back.
Doing something that does bring him back. Are they like chanting? Is that I don't know what they're doing.
I think is one of... I mean, this is another problem with Apocalypse. Why is he here now, of all times? Because if they can bring him back, why haven't they? Have they only just discovered it now?
Well, it's weird, too, because, like, once he awakes, it's like you dig through the ground with the camera and see how far down he is. Like, maybe it would make sense if they were excavating something and came across him, and that's how he wakes up. But it's like this weird pseudo-magic thing that happens.
With the sun, it's so dumb. So either they only just found it, sure, but what happened in Days of Future Past? They said that. That's the thing. He said something happened in Days of Future Past to make this happen. There's no explanation of why this happened now and not in the previous timeline, which they seem to I guess if you don't care about that, then it doesn't matter, but I do.
Yeah.
So I care about it. Cut to Magneto working his blue collar job, just working in a factory, working around a lot of metal. An accident happens and a big kettle thing is gonna fall on a guy, and Magneto not only stops it from falling about it, but then holds it for about 10 minutes.
I know, maybe if he just kind of nudged it over a little bit, then none of this would have happened.
And everybody sees whoops, oops, why didn't, he knows how to use his power, he doesn't have to use his hands, why didn't he just be over to the left, and then it just not be a thing? But it is a thing.
Problem solved, Magneto.
He's we gotta move wife whose name I don't even know if she has a name. Let's call her, it's not Magna.
She has kind of the vibe of what's her name? Mm-hmm. Silver Fox in
oh yeah.
How it's just this generic, serene, pretty wife who is there to soothe the tortured soul of the man.
She's we can't leave, but this is our home. He's we have to leave. I'm Magneto. Their daughter is missing. Their daughter who can talk to animals. That's her mutant power.
Yeah, I like that she has such a outstanding mutant power.
The local police have her and are are you
and
Magneto?
Are holding her hostage? Is this a thing that they would do?
Do you want me to judge whether or not the police would do something wrong these days? Or in the 80s?
Withdrawn.
It is funny because Magneto's, one of his lines is, oh, you don't have any metal. They're we wanted to be safe. And I'm if I was Magneto, you know what I'd always have? Metal. A couple of paper clips, maybe a couple of metal ball bearings, just in case.
Just in case.
Why didn't, when he knew his daughter was missing, why didn't he oh, hey, give me that hammer real quick.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Magneto. And it's frustrating because he later does use metal that's right there on the scene. But it doesn't matter. It's also his wife and daughter are just plot.
Magneto gets the men to release her to them because he's going to go with them.
Yes. And
so she runs to her mom, and then she freaks out because her dad is being taken away, just like he told the story of being his parents being taken away from him. Mm-hmm. And so she freaks out and uses her powers, and it freaks out the other guys. Mm-hmm. Who just murder her.
But yep, so a bunch of the birds are flying around and attacking, and a guy, it's supposed to be an accident, lets loose the arrow. And
you know what wouldn't have happened?
What?
This wouldn't have happened had he not had it notched and pointed at them. So think ahead, guys.
So my question is, would a lightly shot arrow that was accidentally loosed pierce 2 people to death?
Not 2 people. No way. No way.
Because it goes through the mom into the daughter, as gets them both.
Both.
And it just seems okay, if you want to say it even pierced, would it be I don't know how intense that guy was holding the arrow at the time, but it does seem
that's
way
a lot.
Right through her. Into the daughter enough to kill the daughter as well. Yeah,
they probably just didn't want to spend as much time as they would need to have the daughter die and then have the wife leave him.
They were all right, we got 1 plot point. Oh, but the plot point's 2 people. What do we do?
Murder him.
That necklace is a metaphor, in case you didn't realize it. The necklace being covered in blood. It's his attempt at a new innocent life, Hilary.
And now it's covered in blood.
And blood of his old life.
If I was going to miss that, I certainly wasn't going to miss him shouting to the sky. Is this what you want?
Is this all that I am? A Magneto?
How do you first write that scene? Second, act that scene. Third, watch that scene and think, yes, this is what I want to happen. There is nothing ridiculous about this moment.
Cut to Storm. It's Storm, Hilary. Well, actually,
Storm, who is so cool in this.
You have Apocalypse wandering around as a decrepit old man. So
just
now we have him full out. That is being played by Oscar Isaac, who a lot of people know from Star Wars. Has been in a lot of stuff. He was in Ex Machina. He was in another thing that I have seen. He was in A Most Violent Year. He's been in lots of stuff, is the thing. So, but I think most people know him as Poe from Star Wars.
Oh, definitely.
But then also he sees Storm, who is trying to help steal apples and stuff from the thing by making a very non-problematic breeze. Like, it's a breeze and people are like, oh, better hold my coat, and then they steal stuff.
Yeah, but also a very, like, obvious, noticeable thing. Like, she goes out there and, like, stands in the middle of the thing and is like, wind, come to me, and then, like, a breeze happens.
No, that was the
and they very obviously
90s cartoon.
Don't get away. Yes. They just, like, they don't get away with it, and it's obvious that they wouldn't have. I like the story of her being, you know, a kid thief with, like, a team of kid thieves. Mm-hmm. But you sort of expect them to not suck at it. And they appear to just not be good at it in this scene.
Not great. You might have seen Alexandra Shipp in Alvin and the Chipmunks, the Squeakquel. No? You didn't see the Squeakquel?
I haven't, no.
That's the second one. She was in Straight Outta Compton. And after Apocalypse, she was in Love, Simon and Jexy and a few other films lately. So she was in the new Shaft film.
She's great. I have no complaints. I mean, I have lots of complaints around what they do with Storm, but I have no complaints about her portrayal. I think she's really, really cool.
I like her at this beginning where she's kind of, like, tougher and, like, worldly. Mm-hmm. But those are the last lines she ever gets.
Yeah.
So I think it's another one where, like, maybe I would dig her more in Storm if they gave her more things to say and agency. But I don't really like anything that Storm is doing in this movie. And it's not her fault because it's she's supposed to be under the Apocalypse spell and everything. But, like, later on, near the end of the movie, I have a big complaint. In a better world, maybe Alexandra Shipp would have, you know, rocked my world as Storm. But in this, it's like, I was excited to see a young Storm. I was excited to see a young Cyclops and a young Nightcrawler. I was like, we're going to see some of my, you know, X-Men. They were just
don't get a lot. Yeah,
it's an Xavier Fassbender Mystique story. We have a quote from @Nick Gunning, who says, I loved Storm, though she was woefully underused.
Woefully is right.
Yes. That was from our Twitter. Boy, in this Apocalypse, right? I mean, he's old man Apocalypse. I mean, even Palpatine is sprier and more hip with the kids these days.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and the annoying thing too, well, an annoying thing about Apocalypse in this is when he connects with Storm. She takes him to, like, her home or whatever, and he learns English and everything about human history from the television, which, first of all,
how would he have that power?
Yeah. And, like, is that information in the television? Like, is that...
Do you think he just absorbed it when he was, like, a mutant was born with it, but there was nothing to use with it? So they're like, I know I'm a mutant. Know. Trust me.
Someday I'll be able to use my
in the 50s. I'll be king of the world.
But, like, how many channels were there
in the 80s? I mean,
were they constantly doing like documentaries on the history of the Earth?
In 1983, I mean, there wasn't even 24-hour news in 1983, right? I mean, Fox wasn't even a news station wasn't even a television station at the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. There are computers at the time. Why isn't he getting a computer? But even then, it wouldn't be as much information online. Yeah, he's just so old. He's like, television?
Which I think a lot of the weaknesses probably stems from him being trapped in that weird costume, and, like, it's just so heavy, and he can't do any motion acting. Be his face, and I guess they've decided that his face is going to be limited by the fact that he's, like, I don't know, this very serious type, I guess, because he hardly does anything with that either.
I wrote body, 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 body. Is there a line where...
I have no idea.
It's just, I wrote that because that's all Apocalypse talks about. Needing a body, being trapped in this body, needing a new body, using somebody's body. I don't know. Because he rescues Storm. That's the thing. Storm is being chased by the people she stole from. And he's like, you're all lost. I've come to rescue you because you're lost because I'm going to talk to the TV soon and then you won't be lost. And then we realize one of his other powers is, I guess it's supposed to be a molecular level thing, but it really just translates to people mocking him controlling sand.
His sand ability, yeah.
But, like, if this is what you wanted for powers, why did you bring Apocalypse in? Apocalypse can control his own molecular structure, so he can be big, he can change his shapes, he can make his arms into a cannon, he could shrink if he wanted to. He has other things. He's got a spaceship that talks to him named Ship that he can do. He likes machines. He has all these, like, other crazy things. If you wanted this character, if you wanted this power set, why... Honestly, you have Moira McTaggart in here, and when Xavier visits her, he's like, oh, you were married? You have a son? And, like, that's an allusion to Proteus, who is her son in the... If this is the powers you wanted, if this is, like, a reality warping power thing, why didn't you just make Proteus the villain? This is a Proteus movie, and they don't know that. Maybe they don't even know who Proteus is. Maybe Kimber just
I think they probably just wanted the big name of Apocalypse.
Yeah.
But then they just don't have him be Apocalypse in any way. And, like, you don't even need the, like, him thinking he's a god thing. Like, he could just be some person who is charismatic and gets people to follow him and wants to take over the world. Like, none of the baggage that he brings with him is necessary.
Proteus's thing is that his powers are so intense that he has to possess another body, like, on a regular basis, because he burns it out.
Well, there you go.
If he stays in the same body, he'll die. So they already have this Apocalypse wanting to switch bodies. I mean, that was the first thing we saw him do. So you have a character who can manipulate reality, basically, wants to jump into other bodies. And you bring Moira back. I don't understand. It just seems like you could have done it. It would have...
Yeah. Lack of creativity.
It would have made sense if you were doing anything with Apocalypse survival of the fittest, because he talks constantly about how the weak have inherited the earth, and I get that. I that tracks. Like, all of these, in Apocalypse's mind, the weak have protected themselves with weapons. What he learns from the TV, they've protected themselves and call themselves superpowers with their nuclear weapons and their guns and everything. So they're weaker than the mutants who are physically powerful, the fit, but he just loses that in all his other plans.
Exactly.
If he has other plans, like, it's just like, I wrote, Apocalypse is so simple. What the crap? Like, that is a simple concept. But at the same time, they kind of did that survival of the fittest with Shaw in First Class, where he said he was going to nuke everything, and then the strongest will follow him. So, it's just, that's such an easy to sell motivation for Apocalypse. Survival of the fittest.
They overcomplicate his entire thing.
Yeah.
Because, like, he has that, and if you just follow that, then you have a movie. But then he wants to, like, he keeps jumping what he wants. Like, he wants the body, and he wants, now he finds Xavier, and he's going to completely upend his entire plan.
So that he
and use Xavier to control the entire world. It's all just, it's frenzied.
He puts his hands on Storm's face and turns her hair white and, like, his whole thing too is that he, like, upgrades their powers.
Right.
So that,
but we don't really see any evidence of that.
Yeah.
I don't think.
Well, that's because we don't really see anybody's powers beforehand either. So are we to believe that this Storm can only create that kind of non-existent breeze? That Psylocke can only make a knife that maybe he's not supposed to do it. So,
but you know what? Her knife gets bigger, so that's how you know.
That's what he's supposed to do, and also obviously there's a mental component where they're, like, on his side.
Yeah. So let's talk about this for a second, okay?
Okay.
Because part of my problem with Magneto being one of the horsemen is that it makes no sense to me that he would be a follower of this kind at all. And so then that gets me thinking about what is happening with this follower thing, because a lot of it, they don't give you enough. Yeah, they don't give you enough of like he's controlling their minds. You don't get enough of that. And there are very obvious things that you can do to say to the viewer he is controlling their minds. You don't have anything that is obvious that he is controlling their minds. But he is also not remotely charismatic and can't be the type of person who gets people to follow him by virtue of his personality and his compelling nature. And so what you end up with is this like super dull, meandering old guy bouncing from person to person, and then they just like go with him for no apparent reason.
They're obvious. I mean, I think it was with Psylocke and Storm. We're obviously supposed to think there's the mental like control.
I mean,
thing.
I guess, but the problem is that you conflate it. Yeah, you conflate it with him strengthening their powers, which then also kind of leads you to think, are they just following him because he strengthened their powers and they like that?
But at the end of the movie,
just don't get anything.
At the end of the movie with Magneto and Storm, it doesn't seem like that's the thing at all.
Yeah, you don't have that thing where like they shake their heads and they're like, I'm suddenly aware of what's happening.
Magneto
what
would
you
only
see
follow...
is them changing their minds.
Yeah. The only thing Magneto would follow is someone more charismatic and more convincing. So the fact that like this apocalypse is not charismatic at all.
And you also don't play into the despair enough. Like you don't have like maybe you could have it be that like he's just given up. And he's just like, well, I'm just going to go wherever the wind blows me. And he ends up here. But you don't do that either.
It doesn't help that this apocalypse is limited by the physical suit and everything. Just doesn't move. Just doesn't do anything. I mean, that's probably why they gave him the sand powers. Like, oh, well, Oscar can lift his arms up. That's all we need.
Yeah. Well, I don't know why they don't go with the cult leader vibe for him. Like, I feel like that's an obvious direction to go.
You can do that with the mutants, especially...
And with that actor. I think he could sell that really well without all the makeup.
And you could kind of... I mean, Magneto's done the cult kind of thing. I mean, Xavier, you could argue... that's the thing. You could argue, like, what makes Apocalypse different in this situation, then. I'm offering out the same Kool-Aid Xavier is. But yeah, no, there's lots of ways they could have gone. Cut to Mystique trying to get Nightcrawler out of to safety with a fake passport that Caliban makes. We have Caliban, who is played by... Oh, I guess it's supposed to be Magna. That was his wife. Well, that doesn't track. Caliban is Thomas Lamaquis.
I liked him. I thought he was good. I thought he was like creepy without being too creepy.
I like the performance. I don't think it tracks with Caliban at all.
Yeah.
Caliban is either very like, oh, please don't hurt Caliban, to like, I'm a Caliban monster who is also a horseman of apocalypse.
Oh, interesting.
But yeah, this is a different take on Caliban. But yeah, it's one of those things where like I like the performance and the character, but not an adaptation of Caliban. And he tells Mystique about the murder of Magneto's family and Magneto killing all those policemen. Scott getting his glasses, and he likes Jean. He likes Jean's personality now that he can see her.
Now that he can see her,
that was the win, because he puts on the glasses and he sees her. He's like, "Who's that?
Who's that?
That's Jean. You met her." And it's not like, "Oh, well, I don't like her." It's like, "Oh my gosh!"
Now
that I know she's hot.
Look at her sitting under that tree.
How do you feel about Nicholas Hoult so far? Because there's that line where he's like, "Oh, Professor, thank you. You're a genius." And Holt's Beast is like, "Well, I'm not a professor."
Yeah, I guess I don't get a lot of what's going on with Beast in this movie, and I think more than it being Nicholas Hoult, I think it's more writing problems. I think he just doesn't. He's there, and like he can make stuff that they need to get the plot going from point A to point B, but they aren't doing any character development or anything with him.
Plus, I hate Nicholas Holt's face. I hate it.
I like him as Beast.
He's fine as Beast. I just hate his face. It's the same thing with Mystique. Mystique spends a lot more time out of Mystique form in this movie, but so does Beast. The whole thing, like, I keep that in check now. I'm like, okay, well then you don't really have a problem, do you, Beast?
Right. There goes the tragedy of your character.
Yeah, and I guess I'm skipping some things. It's hard because like I don't care about some things. Like Jean and Cyclops have that conversation where people are like, "Oh, those freaks." He's like, "Hey, I've got glasses. You know, I can control it now." And he's like, "Your people are freaked out by me." They're freaked out by me.
Because she has those nightmares.
She had a nightmare that was related to Apocalypse when he woke up that shook the whole mansion and everybody freaked out. And he's like, "Oh, that was you?" And then, you know, Xavier goes into her room and has this whole conversation.
Oh,
and
it's so creepy.
Does he do the psychic thing with putting his fingers on her head?
First of all, he sits on her bed.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
He sits on her bed and has her lie back and then puts her to sleep.
Maybe that's the singer element, huh?
It's so creepy.
It's just so like this gross. Not okay. Beast, stay at the door. Get all the teachers at the door. And also, Xavier, stay in your chair.
Just stay in your chair, man. Yeah. I think that they're trying maybe to have like a paternal thing, but like he's not her dad. He is just a random adult man.
Yes.
If you don't have that relationship, don't be doing that stuff.
So Cyclops and Jean are connecting in that they're both feeling like outsiders in a school for outsiders.
Which you'd think would be like a theme or something interesting to explore now that it's out there.
No.
And they probably do, right? They kind of, they do something with that.
Mystique shows up. She has Nightcrawler.
And she basically is just using Nightcrawler at this point. Like, she's not trying to bring him anywhere in particular. She just is using his power because she has heard about Magneto and wants to help Magneto.
Because she said Caliban, like, give him the passport. What he does with it is up to him kind of thing. But yes, now she needs Nightcrawler to teleport her to Xavier. But he's like, if I can see and stuff, like, he can't teleport across the ocean.
Apparently he can. But also can't.
But she says like, oh, and he's like, I'm not so blue, and I see you're not so blue, and Nightcrawler's like, I'm blue, and I'm like, there are a lot of blue people in this movie. Apocalypse is blue, and Archangel should be blue when he becomes Archangel, but he just kind of gets these like lines.
Yeah.
So, and it's funny because it always felt like they were trying to limit the blue characters.
But there's like,
it is always interesting how many characters turn out to be blue in the X-Men universe.
It's true.
It's just so vibrant. So she's there. She says it's about Magneto, and of course Holt is like, "Oh, you're always about Eric. What about us? Man, you, Beast, the mistake. What's it always about Magneto?" I don't care. When Beast is complaining about that, whenever he's like so hurt that it's about someone other than him, I'm just like, you haven't seen her in 10 years. Of course it's not about you, loser.
Yep.
Go build a nuclear bomb under the school. Well, Apocalypse shows up at Caliban and with Storm, and they recruit Psylocke because they're trying to find people, I guess, and that's why they went to Caliban. But they end up getting Psylocke because he touches the psychic knife she has. I will say, those 80s shoulder pads that Psylocke is wearing at the beginning.
I feel like they're so proud of the fact that they did her costume, like
the purple
with like I think that they just love that they did that, but then they do nothing with her character. So why are you putting so much effort into making this character something that...
Psylocke is played by Olivia Munn, who
I like. I like Olivia Munn. I do think it's weird casting.
What was she in before this? Magic Mike.
Oh my gosh.
She was in Iron Man 2, but very briefly. She played a newscaster.
I think she's primarily a TV actor.
Is she? She was in Office Christmas Party, the Lego Ninjago movie. Yeah, she does some voice work. She was in The Newsroom. Is that a show you watched?
Yeah, I saw her in that. But I'd known her from other things before that.
Yeah. So, Olivia Munn, in the like purple Psylocke like bathing suit, the Jim Lee design, the 90s garb, is, I mean, like late 80s or 90s garb, is very much like, she looks like she stepped right out of the comic in the same way that Jubilee does with the earrings and the big yellow coat and everything. But you're right. This is the case of them being in love with their silent like heavy, their henchmen that like Mystique kind of started in the first X-Men movie, and then you have Lady Deathstrike, and then I guess we have Juggernaut, except he talks in an annoying fashion. So I guess that's kind of what they're going for, but at this point, we don't care about that role anymore, or at least it's not it is not as memorable. I don't think they do things with silent. If you wanted to make her like the silent, power heavy person that's like really memorable because of the cool things they do, give her cool things to do. She does one cool thing, and you put it all over the billboards. So it's not the same level of like, because it was so focused in X-Men 2 when it was Deathstrike versus Wolverine. Like, it was so specific that, like, this person has been hinted at being maybe dangerous, and then when it shows up, it does look dangerous, and it is an intense thing. With this Psylocke thing, she's just another rando with less lines.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's too bad I don't know Olivia Munn well enough, but it seemed like she has a lot of on-screen, like, charisma when she, like, the line she gets when she threatens Mystique. I feel like there's some threat behind there. When during the third act, when they're fighting, it looks like she could play that kind of aggressive role, but like they really just cast her so we could get the Psylocke costume.
Yeah, that really seems like it. That seems like something that they just imagined in their heads, which is, I feel like, a lot of this movie. They were like, wouldn't it be cool if we had Psylocke in her full costume? And that's as far as it went.
Anyway, she brings them to Angel, but Angel's wings are all burnt up and everything. I do kind of dig this, like, Sex Pistols Angel.
Yeah, I know, I do too.
He's just, like, sawed off.
Yeah.
and everything. He's not wearing a shirt, right? He's wearing those 80s jeans. He's got the V and everything. He's just like, he's as punk rock as it gets, this Angel.
Yep.
But he represents a huge problem with these movies in general, from the first X-Men movie to now, in that they want him for the looks, they want him for the power, and turning him into Archangel. They are like, look, we got Archangel, now we've got metal wings. Isn't this cool? Doesn't he look cool with these metal wings? None of the drama that comes with Angel becoming Archangel. None of like that, like, I'm full of rage and hate, and now I hate Apocalypse too. Like, none of that. They don't want the dramatic elements that made these cosmetic changes so important to us in the comics.
Yeah.
And, like, the cartoon does that so much with Angel. Like, that's his thing.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, but that's what it is with this stuff. They want Lady Deathstrike, but they don't want how she hates Wolverine because he's responsible for her father's death. It's just, they want Juggernaut, but not he hates Xavier because his father sent him away so that he could get Xavier's parents' money,
There's an extent to which you can forgive them because it's hard to, that takes time. You'd have to dedicate time to that.
But we're also on what,
the
movie
priorities
11 here?
are just off. The priorities are just off. Yeah. Like, if you are gonna do that, then you do it.
Yeah. This is the sixth straight X-Men movie. I mean, you've also had 2 Wolverine movies and a Deadpool film at this point. You've had time.
Yeah.
To do some of this stuff. And the thing is, they're not doing that stuff with Angel or Psylocke or Storm. And they're not doing that stuff with Jubilee and the newer, or even Apocalypse in a lot of ways, because they want to do new stuff with Xavier and with Magneto and with Mystique, characters that we've seen a million times now. Anyways, new F-bomb joke, because Magneto goes to the school, back to his work, and he's like, you told the police, and now you're gonna die. But it's such a long speech. If I was there, I'd be like, can you just cut to the part where you kill us? Because, holy crap, you are a slow talker, Magneto.
Yeah.
And Apocalypse shows up in the teleportation thing. I guess they're using Psylocke as the teleporter, which is kind of a shadow power she had, but that was later. But it was also a power they gave her in X-Men 3 for those brief moments she was there, that she could like go through the shadow. Anyway, they show up and Magneto's like, who the F are you? And it's like, remember the F-bomb? Remember how Wolverine said the F-bomb
cool and
one
irreverent
time? And now we've had it 3 times in a row. But yeah, he's like, you need to be friends. We're pals. And he takes him to Auschwitz. I know this scene has its protectors and its defenders, this Auschwitz scene, because Auschwitz is a place that should be left standing so that we don't forget. There was just an article out about how 2/3
I saw that.
I forget what the age group was.
I feel like it's 18 to 30 something.
I thought it was young adults. I thought it was younger than that. Aren't aware of the Holocaust anymore. Yeah. And,
some of them haven't heard the word. Some Holocaust, of them don't believe that it happened.
Is believable. I just read Tara Westover's book, Educated, and she was like in this cult-like family for her whole life, and she finally broke away and got to college and everything, and she had to raise her hand and ask a college professor in class what the Holocaust. She saw a word she didn't understand, and she said, "What is that word? I've never seen it before." And the professor was like annoyed, but she had never. No one. She was like homeschooled, but not even schooled by her. So like it's a thing, and I guess it's one of the benefits of doing like a historical, what's the term again? Historical fiction, and that you can change things like that. I think the scene has the right emotional oomph in it, but I don't think it's necessarily because of any work this movie's done. I think it's because of the previous movies. I think it's because of X-Men 1 and First Class.
Well, they just use straight flashbacks.
Yeah, I mean, we even see the gate that he bent.
Yeah.
But I think Magneto, like, tearing it down in his rage, I think it's probably the best Fassbender is in this movie, and it was uphill getting to this scene for him, and then it's all downhill after this scene with him. I think
the way I feel about it is that Auschwitz should not be used as a prop. And I think that it is in this movie, and I think that it wouldn't have been that hard to have that character moment, which like they work so hard for character moments in this movie, but it wouldn't have been that hard to have him have the exact same character moment demolishing another symbol for him personally without taking I just think there is way, way, way too much weight for that image to be used for like trite character development in a superhero movie.
If Magneto doing that at Auschwitz, like going to Auschwitz as it is in the 80s, and then being so full of rage he destroys it and everything. If this was like a more Magneto thing, or like if Apocalypse wasn't there, if this was like Magneto's lost his way, he's forgotten why he's fighting, and then he goes there and he's like, that's right, that's one thing. But when it's like just Apocalypse and he's like, we'll bring the world down.
Yeah, and then you don't even have any irony of him like tearing down this memory of something that happened because of some like vicious man who, well, you know, among other things.
Magneto of his anger, but then if it was the rest of this movie, it's not a great use of that anger at all.
Yeah,
from that thing, and
I think it's disrespectful and unnecessary. He's got his 4 horsemen. We're just gonna trail him around.
Cut to Quicksilver, who's watching the news that Magneto is loose, and he's like, "That's my dad." I'm pretty sure.
Having him in the basement still, and like, there's nothing has changed for Quicksilver.
No, but they do address that. That is one of the few things they address. They never. The way they address Havoc later on is laughable, but they do address Quicksilver. He makes a joke about it later on, which I think is kind of funny.
Yeah, that's true.
I could kind of see Quicksilver as that character. It's like, for him, it's less so than like Havoc, who's been, he's been here for 10 years. He just hasn't moved out of his mom's basement in 10 years. Bull.
I guess if you had it as a contrast with other things in the movie,
yeah, like everybody else has changed.
Better.
Yeah. Everybody else has done things. And Quicksilver's just living there. We cut to the new kids, Jean, Cyclops, Jubilee, and Nightcrawler. They're leaving a movie, but there was a bunch of cut stuff here. There was a scene where they were at a mall because they said like, "Oh, you've never been to a mall?"
Yeah,
Nightcrawler, this is a point. Like Cyclops says, kind of like a funny line, like, "This is a point of national pride. We got to take him to a mall."
Right.
There were scenes with them at a mall that were supposed to take place. They were in a record store, and like Cyclops is supposed to like hold up a Dazzler record to Jean. Nightcrawler gets his first brain freeze. And it's like freaking out. It's like, it hurts. It's a brain freeze. It's like, it's freezing my brain.
So this brings up a major complaint I have about this movie. We're just starting to get into this point where we're isolating this small group of newer kids. And later, like when they get back to the mansion,
they become the
find
heroes we're following.
They do, but then they also don't. Like they line them up as if what we're going to do is have Xavier doing his thing over here, and Cyclops and his little group are going to be like the like we'll follow them into like the big thing at the end, and then we'll have other, it just feels like there's going to be factions and they're all going to come together, but it just doesn't end up playing that way, and it makes me feel crazy because they don't do anything. No, I guess they sort of hook up with Mystique, I guess, and then she takes them there, and then that's just sort of it.
Again, obviously Singer and Kinberg do not care about like these are not their characters of interest. They're
Which is fine, but then just don't put them in that position. Like if all you want to do is make an Xavier Magneto movie over and over and over and over, just do it. Stop pretending.
Don't do it. Don't listen to Hilary. Stop.
I'm just saying, stop pretending that you're going to be doing something else.
Get different directors and writers.
They keep being like, we're going to do this movie that does this, and then it's just an Xavier Magneto movie. And then they're like, we're going to do this movie that focuses on these characters, and it's just an Xavier and Magneto movie over and over and over. Just stop lying about it.
They're leaving Return of the Jedi, and they're having an argument about which Star Wars is the best one, and it's basically between the first and Empire. And then Gene says, well, whatever, the third movie's always the worst. And so that's supposed to be a dig at The Last Stand. But then guess what? You just talked about your own movie, because this is the third in your own trilogy here with First Class and Days of Future Past, and now this. Also,
I often enjoy little nods like that, like little self-aware things, but it doesn't fly if you just continue sucking.
And also, in 1983, how many trilogies are there to compare this to? I was thinking, I'm like, this is where we start getting into a lot. I mean, I guess you could say, like, remember Escape from Planet of the Apes? That wasn't as good, but it actually is it's a pretty fun movie.
It's pretty good.
I guess, is Jaws 3 out at this point?
Jaws 3 is atrocious. I guess there is that.
What she's necessary, but Jaws 2 is supposed to be crap too. So I don't know what Gene
I will
is
take
comparing
Jaws 2
this
over 3 any day.
But what if I gave you 3D glasses for Jaws 3? And you can watch it in 3D.
Well, all right.
All right, cut to Mystique and Xavier having this whole conversation, and she's talking about what she's doing out there. He's like, I'm trying to make a school that people can come to. We're gonna have regular humans and mutants in this school. It's gonna be a full thing. And she's like, you don't get it. The rest of the world hasn't changed. Like we're out there. We're more known. She says a line that. It shows you how, even in the bad X-Men movies, how a lot of there still can be smart and X-Men messages in there, because she says
themes come out.
Yeah, she says they still hate us. They're just more polite about it. And I think, this movie came out in May 2016. Things changed in November 2016, and I think it kind of reminds us that, like, we're all like, boy, people are really racist now. But, like, people, it was Aziz Ansari did a monologue on his SNL, and he was talking about how we didn't realize how, like, to themselves a lot of racists were keeping things for so many years. Like, obviously people were incredibly racist, but, like, when you look at, like, November 6th, like, prior to this is what Mystique's talking about. Like, people were racist. Maybe they were more polite about it. Maybe they were more PC about their racist tendencies. But, like, post then, it's just giving them free reign to be as racist as they want to be. And I think, like, Mystique, this coming out before all that, like, Mystique's words almost feel prophetic.
Yeah, that's interesting.
This is it. People they're just more polite about their bigotry. At this moment, when things are like that, and now it's weird how nostalgic you can get.
I know
for that.
Could you at least hide your racism?
Yeah. Go back. We didn't realize
these are the standards that we have. Just pretend for us, will ya?
But I just thought that was like a poignant line hidden in this film.
Hidden, and also undercut by this film, because you have Mystique coming in as this person who has been experiencing the world while Xavier is sort of hiding in his little cocoon. But then what happens with Mystique? She just joins his cocoon. She doesn't bring him out into the world. She doesn't reach out to more people.
Also, we didn't mention, everybody's like, how come Moira doesn't remember everything? Because First Class ended with Moira, with Xavier erasing her memory so that the X-Men could remain hidden.
Which is an act of violence upon her. Can we just say it?
It's pretty gross.
You can't reach into somebody's mind and change their memories.
Yeah. Well,
stop doing it. Stop it.
Well, what else is Xavier supposed to do, Hilary?
Deal with the consequences of his actions, Eric.
That's not his mutant power.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway, his power is that he can bear the pain of others and also erase their memories.
And manipulate them to think whatever he wants them to think.
But
it's okay
still when using water fountains. Noble. So he's gonna use his helmet, he's gonna use Cerebro, which is now basically 100% the Cerebro we recognize from the earlier films.
And I can never quite tell. I think I figure it out in this movie. It's never quite clear to me if like the people in the room see the shadows and stuff, or if it's
they do, because
we're
they
just
ask
seeing
what is that. Yeah, I don't know the difference, because we see like Moira and Wolverine and X-Men 2, like they see all the glowy people, but I don't know if Xavier's supposed to be seeing more. I think
There's something about the acting too, because I'm pretty sure at some point Beast is just like watching.
He's watching Xavier, who is seeing Moira for the first time when he finds Moira leaving the Apocalypse tomb and everything. Like he sees Moira, so he must only see like those Beast at this time must only see those glowy things. Yeah, they try a lot of Xavier's awkward about it, because she's like, what's going on with her? She's like, well, she looks great. And then they're like, oh, is this the first time you checked in on her? He's like, no, of course not. I mean, yes, once, twice. It's like, so is this funny or gross?
I know. I feel like his humor throughout this movie is really, really belabored. Yeah, like they have him play awkward a few times, and it doesn't play right.
At one point, he's like, oh, you just shot that tree. That was my grandfather planted that tree. That was my favorite tree. You're hired. You're on the team. You're in the school. I'm like, his favorite tree? What?
He has a favorite tree. And also, his grandfather planted that tree. Is he English or not?
Beast kind of says, I based the color off of, I mean, not you, Mystique. I mean, yes, you, Mystique. You based the color of Cerebro?
Why would you base a color off of a body? Oh, just...
Off of a what?
Off of her body.
Oh,
it's
I thought
weird. Like,
you didn't finish body, so it sounded like you said, why would you base the color off of her butt?
I based the color of this high-tech piece of technology off your butt.
I liked your butt, so I made Cerebro blue. Does it look like your butt? That was the goal.
I wanted it to remind me of your butt.
I wanted him to call it Butt Rebro. They're all in there. You got Havoc in there, because Havoc has brought Xavier, he brought Cyclops there, so he's still hanging around. He went with him to talk to Moira. 40, Hilary. If he was 17 in First Class,
make them look the age that they should.
At least 37. Do it. Beast is there, Mystique is there, Moira's there, and Xavier's there, and that's important, because Xavier is trying to find Magneto, and he's having this conversation. He's like, I feel your pain, and Magneto's like, you don't know my pain. Conversation we've heard a million times.
Ad nauseum.
Apocalypse is like, wait a tick. What's going on here? Who's this? And there's this kind of... I don't hate some of the stuff that's happening here, because Apocalypse is like almost joyous that he's discovered Xavier and his power. He's like, now this is new.
See, I wish they'd done a little more with it, because there's an element of like creepiness to it that I think they really could have leaned into, because Xavier is always so much in control, particularly in these moments. And it's this private thing between him and Magneto. And when Apocalypse turns and is suddenly aware, that is a striking moment, and I feel like they could have done more with it to make it like this weird turn.
He says something like, we see that he's like taking over Xavier's mind. He's connected with, maybe Psylocke is helping him connect with Magneto, who's connected to Xavier. The point is, he somehow connects with Xavier, and Xavier's eyes blacken over, and it's Apocalypse speaking through Xavier saying, I've never felt this power. Or maybe is it Xavier describing Apocalypse? I don't know, because Apocalypse I don't get why he'd be so impressive.
I think that the way I interpreted it was that it was Xavier because
he's never felt so much power from Apocalypse.
Enhancing his power.
Right.
Like he does with other people.
Yeah. Well, you know what?
That's how I interpreted it.
Yeah, I always thought it was Apocalypse, like, speaking through Xavier there, like, I've never felt it. But maybe, I don't know. It's not super clear to me, but that probably tracks, too, that he's like, whoa. Because now it's a huge thing. Apocalypse is like, I can do anything. And so he connects with Xavier's powers to everybody who's in charge of the nuclear weapons and the keys that turn the nuclear weapons on. And he's doing this whole speech, this whole scene. He's doing this speech about how, like, no more weapons, no more sticks, no more weapons, no more superpowers, like no more America, Russia, China, all these people that consider themselves superpowers because they have nuclear weapons and everything, done. Because his idea is that he's going to shoot the missiles up into space and then they're just done. And this is where, like, the trailers all showed the missiles going into space, and it made it look like we're going to see a lot of missiles hitting, or the X-Men are trying to stop the missiles. But so, like, as this is happening, the first time you're seeing this movie, like, holy crap, what's happening? They're shooting all these missiles. And then when you realize they're just into space, it's like, this is something, as much as I love the X-Men movies that they do, where they get you hyped sometimes for something that is happening, and then it's like, no, we're not doing that. Yeah. We're doing something smarter.
Right. And if they had dwelled more on the Cold War, then maybe that would have had any impact. But as it is, it's like, okay, well, there are lots of things that make them superpowers that have nothing to do with nuclear power. Right.
But yes, if they had talked about how the nuclear Cold War and the tensions and everything, the thing is, using everybody to create a nuclear war is what Shaw wanted to do in First Class. But it's totally something Apocalypse would do. If he was, if that is something he would do, and then he's going to care and be in control of the mutants that survive, doing Shaw's plan from that. But they can't do that because they want to show that Apocalypse doesn't want the weak in charge anymore, so he's taking away their weapons. But it's just, it reminds me, a lot of this movie reminds me of Age of Ultron. In a lot of ways, some positive and some negative. The negative thing here is, remember how, like, Ultron is this super advanced AI, and he gets, like, he's just in the internet in Age of Ultron. He's just there, and he has control of everything, and he doesn't do anything because the Avengers movies are not the movies that can, like, cover that, like, high sci-fi concept of an intelligent, antagonistic AI being in charge of everything. And it feels just like that. Like, oh, we gave Apocalypse the telepathy to do in charge of the whole world. So he has to use missiles, but he can't use them. It's the same thing. Like, we created an AI that can now access the internet, but he's not going to do anything with the internet.
Right. Yeah.
And it's frustrating because then it's the same thing with, like, I've kind of felt like I like Ultron as a villain in the comics. We kind of got a neutered version of Ultron in the movie. I feel the same way with Apocalypse. And his whole speech, it just goes on and on. I mean, there's some cool, like, voice work there where he's like, no more superpowers. Done.
Yeah.
But all his speeches are nonsensical. They never go anywhere.
They are completely nonsensical, and it's another moment of him, like, pinballing in his plans.
Yeah, he's just...
Like, did we know at some point that his plan was to launch nuclear missiles? No. It's just he's reaching that, I have an opportunity to do something dramatic. Here I go.
And it's too bad because, like, this, if you don't know what's happening, that scene is, like, the first time this movie really starts feeling exciting. Because you have them connected to Apocalypse. The music's kind of picking up. He's doing his nonsensical villain speech. Missiles are flying into the sky. You then have him, like, Xavier breaking out. He's like, screaming and everything. He can't stop. He's like, get out of my mind. Everything's intense. He tells Havoc to blow up Cerebro, and then he tells him to wreak havoc, which is, like, a pretty sweet, like, from the comic book lines. And we get to see Havoc shooting his beams from both arms and then his chest, like, destroying Cerebro. And, like, all of this is like, wow, this movie's getting exciting now. And then it ends with just the missiles lightly floating in orbit, just disappearing, and then everybody's like, well, that was weird. It's just, It's so
Guess we'll move on
anticlimactic.
now.
We see Stan really Lee and we see his wife Joan, and it was the last time she would be on screen before she passed away soon after. They're both looking at the missiles. Stan and Joan are holding each other, looking at the sky, at the missiles, terrified. I think we even see the missiles in Stan's glasses.
In the glasses, I think so, yeah.
So, like, all of that, it's just, and then it just kind of, but then they teleport there, and Magneto grabs Xavier, who's been knocked out. Havoc responds by shooting at them, but guess what? The Blackbird has been outfitted with basically a bomb as its engine, and he's like, I'm gonna, he was playing kind of coy about it. Beast was saying how, I built it's gonna come out of the basketball court and everything, but she's like, you still built a bomb. You're building like military weapons down here. And then he's like, don't do it, because Havoc blows it up, which then is going to blow up the school.
The entire school.
Quicksilver shows up, and if Quicksilver hadn't shown up then, everybody would be dead.
Everybody.
The X-Men down in the basement, Moira would be dead, all the students in the class, and I don't know, maybe? No, I guess not. So, like, the only ones who would be alive would be the new students who saw Return of the Jedi.
I guess so, yeah. Now, Quicksilver shows up. Tell me how you feel about this Quicksilver scene.
Well, when I saw during the trailers, they show him running in the mansion. And the scene they show him of is his face having that windback effect that you get from G-Forces. But he has a grimace, unlike he does in Days of Future Past. So I thought they were going to do a scene where it looked like his speed he was going to have to struggle to keep that up with. And Nick over on Comic Book Coffee Break had talked about how that should have been done. It was my thing, like, from the beginning. Like, before I saw the movie, I thought that would be thing. And then when you watch this scene of the school blowing up and they're playing Sweet Dreams, it's all done goofy, even as like the school is slowly blowing up and stuff.
Yeah.
But you could start with him putting on his Walkman. It's just another day in the park for him. He's gonna walk in the park, I guess. He puts it on. He's playing the music. He goes. He gets some people. He's being goofy. But then it's getting more intense, and maybe like the music cuts out, and like the film score cuts in, and maybe it's getting more intense. We keep cutting back to like real time speed to show us he's not as fast as he needs to be in these scenes. But no, it's just 100%.
It's just a retread.
A retread, yeah.
It's just a retread. And I think you're right that they could, if they wanted to have him have the headphones and everything, they could have done that. But I just think it's a fundamental difference between what he did in the first movie and what he does in this movie. Because in that, it was a plan. They had a plan to do this, and he was going to be prepared to behave in a certain way. This one, he's just coming here to find his dad, and the house is blowing up. Yeah. So you should have him like stop and be like, "Oh, holy crap," and then like have to deal with it. And I think you're absolutely right that it needs to be him struggling. That's the only thing that makes this scene interesting. If you're going to do it again, which I don't think they should have done it again at all, but if you're going to do it again, you need to give it a different feel. You need to do something that's different. You shouldn't have done it again
because, like, it's just, that's the scene that even people who don't like the X-Men movies in general still know that, like, the Days of Future Past Quicksilver scene is a fun scene.
It's a great scene.
And it's got the song and everything. It's cool. And we hadn't seen that power before. We hadn't seen a power like that before. So to do this, I mean, this movie is Diminishing Returns the movie.
Yes.
in so many ways. It's going to get more, but like with everything that it's doing, it's like, hey, remember Moira? Hey, remember the Quicksilver scene? Hey, remember Mystique? It's just it's like even Star Wars when it is, Star Wars is like the most referential series out there, but like it will still change the names of planets. It will still like do different planets and change characters. They'll still have like the same lines and the same plot threads and stuff, but like at least they'll change the cosmetic and the trappings and stuff. This movie isn't hiding anything. It's
like, remember how you liked Quicksilver? Well, let's do it again.
Yeah, and especially because it's the school blowing up, and because we find out that Havoc dies in this. If Havoc died because Quicksilver couldn't be fast enough, and
also, why is Quicksilver in this movie?
Because we just liked him so much in Days of Future Past.
Exactly.
I mean,
that's not a good enough reason.
I would have liked. I mean, he went to the school so that he could find his dad. I get that, but I guess because I guess Magneto's disappeared since Days of Future Past. But I guess, I mean, I would, even if Magneto wasn't in this movie, I would have liked Quicksilver to come back.
It's nice to see him, but you could cut him out completely and it wouldn't change. I mean, the school exploding, I guess, but like, you don't need him in this movie. And they pretend that you need him later on with like his family stuff with Magneto, but even that doesn't have any impact whatsoever on what happens.
I like him in this movie. I don't like the retread, but I like Quicksilver I like the element he kind of brings with the rest of the group. I like that he's one of the people who's experienced with his powers, which is kind of nice in like when you get to the fight.
I like him and I like watching him, and I think he's one of the only people who is watchable in this movie. Ooh. But I think if you're looking at it as what do we need to do to have a successful movie and plot, you know, like scenes that have to happen to make the movie happen, I don't think that he's necessary. And I think he's an element that they just toss in.
If they had done the original cast trilogy instead, they could have recast him, and
we've just got a cobbled together movie start to finish, and he's just one of the cobbles.
You know, this is the first time the mansion has blown up in these movies.
Yeah, it made me think of the cartoon.
Yeah, which actually is always blown up. Yeah, well, not even always, just the once, right? Just Juggernaut.
Just Juggernaut, yeah. It must be later when they piece it back together.
Yeah, that's the very end of the movie. You know, you and I know somebody, Hilary.
We do?
Our mutual friend Sally had not seen Days of Future Past, but she watched X-Men Apocalypse, and she liked the Quicksilver scene.
Well, sure.
But that's because it's the exact same scene. Right.
Yes.
That's the thing. Like, if you hadn't seen but if you had, then this is just like, why are we doing this again?
Yep.
It's like if in Return of the Jedi, it was the exact same I'm your father scene. Like,
yes.
He's like, nope, I'm repressed. I don't believe it. And then they just do it again. Like, well, ugh. But yeah, I think it is the first time. Anyway, Stryker shows up because they got the psychic event they can track. Hey, you know, I should say, I don't know who the actor is. There's a guy in the Pentagon who is like, who's turning the keys? I kind of liked him. He doesn't do anything, but his deliveries kind of like show that he actually cares about what's happening.
Oh, that's good to have somebody.
Yeah, he's just one of those throwaways, like, who the hell? What is... Guys! But doesn't it seem like nobody else cares about the events that are happening? Like, when they're explaining Magneto's metal things, like, oh, zinc, it's all these missiles, all these nuclear weapons are in the air. And, like, you cut to all these military people, and they're just like, huh, that's weird.
Interesting. What are we going to do about that?
Nobody's running around, nobody's screaming, like, the nukes!
They're just seems like somebody would be like, the what? Yeah, How is this what?
They
what
just want to know who pressed the button.
Yeah.
I don't...
Yeah.
I keep going back. Stryker
show up.
They can track the... Again, diminishing returns. Singer he effing loves Stryker. Stryker is like his baby in these films. I mean, these movies love Stryker, but he was in... At this point now, this is the fourth time we've seen Stryker, and we referenced Stryker by having his father in First Class.
Mm-hmm. Yep. He's everywhere.
You know what?
This is adding another element to the movie. Like remember how there's some secret government situation? Mm-hmm. That's just like in there for no apparent reason. Mm-hmm. Could we at some point have the X-Men fight Apocalypse in this movie? Or like try to fight Apocalypse or do anything about what's actually happening in the movie?
What's his name? I can't remember his name. Oh, here
Stryker?
It is. No, Josh Hellman is back. He was in Days of Future Past. He's back as Stryker, who's in much more in charge these days. I didn't realize it in Days of Future Past, but watching some of the facial expressions he makes in this, he's Sean William Scott as Stryker.
I don't get it.
Sean William Scott, the actor, he just kind of he has kind of the same facial structure and makes some of the same expressions, but he's also in this, he's very much like a bro Stryker.
He's such a bro.
He doesn't miss lifting. He's powered by energy drinks. You know, yes. This is as bro as Stryker as he's ever been.
Definitely.
Yeah, if you hadn't seen any of the other X-Men movies, what does this matter to you? That's the thing too. He gets a bunch of the unconscious. He knocks them out unconscious. So he grabs like Quicksilver and Mystique and Beast and someone else.
I don't remember.
Just the three of them. somebody
Yeah,
else, I
maybe.
thought. Anyway, but so Jean, Nightcrawler, and Scott, who are looking for Havoc, they go after him. They don't get caught by it. They're hiding. They stay hidden. They hop on the helicopter and fly away. Jean uses her powers to make them not seen. But once they're on the helicopter,
start where just the three of them form a team and like really take control of the situation and like come at it from a different angle, right?
They're talking, and there's some character moments here. Nightcrawler can't teleport out because of the power. She can't use her thing. Cyclops is very sad at this moment because his brother has been
crying
killed.
Face.
His crying face. I feel bad for him because how do you cry face with this? But I guess we saw James Marsden cry face a lot with the glasses and the goggles. But I mean, this guy Ty Sheridan is no James Marsden.
Oh, it's awful. I hate it.
James Marsden was able to, be charismatic even behind the glasses and with the script he was given. He's like, Havoc was going to do something with his life. He was the one that was going to be important. And I was like, your 40-year-old brother is going to do something with his life? When? If not now, when, Cyclops? At what point?
You're the future, Cyclops.
Was Havoc just like, oh yeah, tomorrow, anytime? Because he's not a member of the X-Men, is he?
I don't think so because they're all surprised to see him.
Jean tells him like he thought you were going to be the one who was going to do great things. He was proud of you.
I thought he was going to be the one. Well, I thought he was going to be the one.
And Cyclops says something like you don't. How do you know? You don't know how I feel. And she says, I know what everybody feels. I like that because it's one of those like brief character moments. It's like, you get so thirsty during this film, you'll take sand, you'll drink sand for water in this movie. But like that moment, it's not something that we really had with Jean in the other films. Like the whole
it is a good moment.
A young Jean who can't really control her power. She does. She knows what everybody feels and she doesn't want to. Xavier has that speech in Futures Past where he's like, we can take that and we can bear it for them. But that's not what Jean wants to do. And so I like that line. It kind of stuck with me. They get there. They get to Stryker's base. He's like, "Where's our psychic things?" I like Stryker in X-Men 2. I like him in X-Men 2. We only need him in X-Men 2. There's other military-like or conspiracy-like characters in the X-Men universe you could use. We could have had Guy Ritchie or...
do we need them? Couldn't we just cut these scenes entirely?
Probably.
Like, Stryker takes them to a facility. They're trapped in the facility. Eventually, they get out of the facility, and then they go on with the plot of the movie.
Yeah. Yes, they could have... I mean, outside of them not having a transportation at the mansion, they could have just got transportation very quickly, and then you'd have a 2-hour movie instead of 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Purposeless. Except they want to have a little scene with Wolverine.
So, Hilary, that's a spoiler.
Whatever, this isn't...
Oh yeah, we're going to spoil the movie. There is a really funny scene though in this where they're all waking up. Mystique and Quicksilver are waking up. Oh, Moira's there, right? They're all waking up because they were unconscious. Beast is in his beast form, and Quicksilver sees it, like, ah, what is that? And he's like, what? He's like, oh, is that gonna happen to all of us?
See, Quicksilver, I'll give him this. He is locked in for this entire movie. Like he's good.
He's good in this. He's like, when he does comedy in this movie, it works. The whole they're like, who did this? Who took him? Like, we don't know who took him. And they're just yelling that. And then Quicksilver's like, we don't know, bro.
Yeah, I love that part.
And you know what? Again, he's talking to Bro Stryker. So that's even more apropos. But yeah, the whole, we don't know, bro. It's just... It's like a little late. It's like a little late for him to say it. Like everyone's saying it together, and then he just kind of like is on the end. The timing is good. Yeah, he's good in that. They're wandering around. They think they see a generator. It's not a generator, but there is this thing that has something in there. He's like, is it an animal? And Jean says, it's not an animal. It's a man. And
it's a man, baby.
It's a man, baby. Sorry. Then the guards are coming in, so Jean lets the locks out, and it is this point that Jean is now responsible for the murder of a whole lot of people. I get that it's like in defense and you're doing what you need to do, but in a way she has also murdered people. I mean,
she's definitely murdering people, and also can't she just do what she's been doing this entire time and make them invisible?
They have their powers back. Yeah, Cyclops could just blast them.
Yeah, right.
And they could do it, but no, she's like, I'd rather see these people get murdered. Dird.
Yeah,
And
slice and dice.
so that's what she does. She opens it up, and feet first, we realize it is the Weapon X version of Wolverine with the Weapon X helmet and kind of eye thingy. And it's Hugh Jackman. He's back in cameo mode. Extended cameo compared to his first class cameo. This is definitely them trying to do their... This came out beforehand, but it reminded me of the Vader scene at the end of Rogue One. Kind of that fan servicey.
Oh, yeah.
Let's just see this character.
Fan service is right.
Let's just see this fan favorite character just let loose and tear people up. But the thing is, you can be more brutal on screen with a lightsaber in the movies and just show Vader like tearing the room up and everything, and the ratings board is going to be fine. With Wolverine, they want to do that scene. They want to make it bloody and visceral, but they still can't show most of the stuff there. I mean, Logan had to be rated R. They're still limited by what they want to do because of the PG-13 rating, so it's not much more intense than anything we've seen before.
No, definitely not.
I mean,
basically the only difference is that he has the helmet on. I feel like I've seen this exact scene several times.
Yeah, it's not a big jump from him in the mansion in X-Men 2. It's just now they've thrown more blood on the wall.
Yeah, that splatter of blood on the wall is so cheesy.
Was that your so cheesy note, Hilary?
Well, maybe, actually. It's right around then. I just, that like, right on the wall, I'm just like, oh.
There's one scene that's just brutal to watch.
That
you don't even
was my head landing on the mic.
There's a scene, he's on a guy, and he's just slashing. We don't see what's happening, but he's just slashing over and over and over again the guy's head. And I'm thankful for the PG-13 rating at that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, I don't trust that these movie creators are creative enough to do a worthwhile Logan going nuts scene.
I don't,
with like an R rating.
I don't hate this. This kind of fan service isn't enough for me, but it is definitely expendable. Unfortunately for me, this movie hasn't gotten going until Apocalypse got connected with Xavier. Until we get to that whole, wreak havoc scene, this movie has been very slow to go. And
exclusively set up for things that don't matter.
It's all been set up. It's all been retread set up. So, honestly, if I turned on the movie right at that scene, then I don't hate the Wolverine scene for pacing issues because, this is where, anything is happening. So I'm happy. And I just don't like fan service at all. As soon as it happens, it's just so obvious that it completely pulls me out of the movie. As soon as I see it, I'm like, well, this is just to make people feel giddy, and I just don't appreciate it at all. I know a lot of people are annoyed by this, but I like it. I like it. It helps because Days of Future Past ended up with that cliffhanger. Remember, Mystique was supposed to be Stryker. And she was supposed to be the one there when they dug up Wolverine's body, when they brought him up from the water, and they're like, what do we do with him? And he turns around and it's Mystique, and I was like, oh, that's going to be a cool dynamic, and they just don't do that.
Right. I forgot about that completely.
Because, if she wanted to be the renegade who's, off helping and saving people, and it was her and Wolverine, and Wolverine's like, you saved me, I don't, and all this stuff, that would have been cool.
I'd watch that movie.
Yeah, but it wasn't this thing, so, that would have left some questions in my mind, so... Evidently, Stryker still got his hands on Wolverine, still ruined his life, and in a way, you could still watch X-Men Origins now, and it would track, except for the fact that Wolverine escaped in X-Men Origins. So, I don't know, none of it really matters timeline-wise anymore, but
yeah,
I don't hate the fact that, they let Wolverine out, and he's basically just in beast mode for this. I just don't think... It's just one of those things where it's well, you're still not doing as extreme. If Wolverine had done more things that we hadn't seen him do, but how much can you do after a while with Wolverine and his claws? Yeah. I mean, how much leaping, running, jumping off a wall and into somebody can you show?
It's almost like you shouldn't dwell on that kind of character exclusively for movie after movie after movie after movie.
This is where we have the quote, NDP Tom Winters said on Twitter, this movie felt like 2 10-year-old X-Men fans got together and said what they think would be cool in an X-Men movie. Kid 1, Magneto's family get kills and he goes on a killing spree. Kid 2, and then Apocalypse controls Professor X and he goes bald. Kid 1 and 2, Weapon X!
That comment That Twitter comment captures so much about what I feel about this movie.
I love how morbid Kid 1 is, though. It's like, Kid 1's first suggestion is Magneto's family gets killed. But, I mean, he's right. And he said, it was funny, I mentioned, he later went on to say, just reminded me of how my best friend and I used to write and draw X-Men comics in elementary, and we just put whatever we thought was cool and badass in it. The story was secondary.
Yeah, that's what we got.
Yeah. But you know what? I wouldn't mind reading this guy's elementary school X-Men comics. That could be fun.
You think he still has it?
Yeah, I
mean, floppy disk.
You just read that. I mean,
as I'm thinking through this, I think that like there are things like Terminator and things that I really do enjoy. Like this the nonsense. It's just like throwing everything at you, explosions and chases and everything. But I think the trick that makes Apocalypse not work is that there's not a through line.
Yeah, no.
Like you need a much more simple, straightforward story.
Well,
you
it's
start
the problem
and you trace it all the way through to the end. But what they do in this is that they take scenes from movies that they would have liked to see and just put them all together. And that doesn't work.
With this, it's like it's again using this cast, using this timeline. You're using a cast that we have seen, but maybe people didn't see First Class. Okay, whatever. So you reintroduce them, but now you're reintroducing characters that we have seen before, but you have to reintroduce them because they're younger, so they're new, they're not the same. Whereas if you had just been like Days of Future Past, X-Men 4, you know what I mean? With the old class, you wouldn't have to do that. That's the benefit of keeping cast and characters at the same age and same timeline, because you could just, if you wanted to do like, we're just gonna do a balls to the wall big action movie, we're gonna do like a whole like disaster movie, X-Men movie, you wouldn't have to spend the first hour and a half reintroducing everybody. We would just assume we know who they are, and you could just be like, they're here, they're wearing this costumes, they're feeling this kind of way a little bit, boom, action stuff. And you wouldn't have to do all that heavy lifting. But because you've decided to commit to the prequel timeline, you're in this messy thing. And, you know, I guess that's kind of a benefit that Dark Phoenix has, because then they have introduced everybody. But, like, the idea that you want to do a disaster movie, it's like, well, most disaster movies don't have this hour and a half of character.
No.
And usually they get to the disaster spectacle stuff a little bit quicker. So, anyway, that's all.
You know
to
what
say.
I'm determining
I don't
at this
hate
point?
The Weapon X scene, but that's
okay.
But anyway, you're
all
determining what?
This isn't a good movie.
Guys, did you know what Hilary's power is? That's her trick. She's always hated X-Men Apocalypse.
That's my trick. It's my superpower.
What? Okay, there is a bit where they're all running out, and they're like, we had some help, and they're running to escape, and they're gonna blow up the wall to free them. And Nightcrawler's like, okay, on the count of 3. He goes 1, 2, and then he looks and realizes he doesn't have a third finger. He's only got a thumb. And I'm like, why would that be new to him? This is the first time.
Usually, when I count to 3, I have more fingers.
Anyway. There is a scene that cracks me up where they're all running out now, and Nightcrawler teleports, and Cyclops is like, holy crap! Because he like almost ran in and got teleported.
I do like that. I like that.
There's this like funny, like, that's an element though, it's like, oh right, these are kids. Again, I don't think that ever happens again, but that's like a funny scene with the idea that these are kids and they don't know what they're doing. It just kind of cracks me up seeing Cyclops be like, ah, frick! Yeah,
that was funny. More of that.
Yeah. Well, guess what? That was the last of that.
Great.
So Xavier has Xavier has been captured by the horsemen and Apocalypse and everything. And Apocalypse,
in his new attempt at a plan,
Apocalypse uses Xavier to tell the world that he's in charge. The weak have taken over. You've been lost. I'm your god. Blah blah blah. And Xavier's doing that. And then the last message is like, "I will just join me or die" or something. And Xavier says, "My last message is those of you with power, protect those without." But he also delivers a secret message to Jean about where they are and everything. The scene where Xavier's off to side, because people are so all over the place. This is probably more of a defensive stance for this film. The movie feels like an X-Men annual. It doesn't have the same oomph
of Days of Future Past and First Class and all the other movies, because they're always dealing with something that seems very important. Apocalypse is a big bad guy who we've never seen before. He shows up. His plans are muddy as crap. There's a whole bunch of characters. There's a whole bunch of fan service that doesn't land. It's too long. It's unmemorable. You can kind of skip it if you want to. It feels like an annual in the comics, which are always fairly detached, which tend to have like a weird kind of plot that you wouldn't normally feature in the regular thing. Will bring in a lot of different characters, maybe crossovers and stuff. I just feel like it's bloated. It, depending on your point of view and what you want from that issue, you might get what you want, or you might just want to skip it forever. Like having a lot of characters not having character arcs, but just going back and forth. It has an annual feel to it, and I think that's where a lot of my forgiveness, when I do forgive it, comes from.
Mm-hmm.
But I
can definitely see that. I guess I feel like it, while it may be doing a similar thing, it's still doing it badly.
Oh, yeah, sure, no. And if you don't care about annuals, then that wouldn't mean anything to you. You know,
but I mean, annuals don't suck, right?
Yeah, well, some do, but that's the thing. Like, there are good annuals. That's the thing. I'm saying it just, like, that's kind of like the vibe I get. And I think because it makes me think of that, I get a little bit more forgiving about stuff. But it still just takes forever to get moving. My thinking comes from, like, oh, this isn't an X-Men movie. Really? It's an X-Men side adventure. It's like, this is just this is just a weekend adventure for them.
Yeah, I like the idea of having a movie that doesn't have to be like some part of a major arc or anything. I really dig that.
We just didn't get that in a great
way.
It
just is a bad movie that is doing that.
But yeah, when he's giving his speech, it's just like, what do you want, Apocalypse? Is your plan to live forever? Is your plan for the weak to inherit the earth? Is your plan for you just to be a god? Is your plan that you want to connect with everybody psychically? What is the plan you want to shape the world? What is your plan?
Yeah, it's all over the place.
He's such a simple character.
Yeah.
And I don't get it, because we know from past explanations and everything that a lot of Singer's knowledge of the X-Men isn't from the comics, it's from the animated series. And Apocalypse is always like such a scene stealer in the cartoon.
Yeah. That's where I know Apocalypse from, and it's completely unrecognizable in this movie.
Whenever he talks, the voice actor is so cool. Whenever he talks and does his speeches, they're so grandiose and over the top, but they do have this sense of, like, I don't know, that vibrato, and it's just that Oscar Isaac. I mean, I probably shouldn't blame Oscar Isaac, because like the script is where he's like quoting the speeches from. I just don't get it, how you can go from the cartoon to this, from all those like, look at me and tremble, I am your end. I mean, with this, it's just like, you are but a child and I will be your... He's so soft-spoken.
He's so soft-spoken, and not in a cool way. Like, sometimes you can have like an intense, like, powerful character, and they are soft-spoken, and that kind of like adds to their menace. But this one is like, speak up. What was that?
I mean, that was Shaw in First Class, right? That he was quieter about it. He was more slimy, but also a bit more charismatic. Like Apocalypse, you want the big. If you're going Apocalypse, you want to go big, or you I keep thinking of the Emperor, because they, like, from the Star Wars movies, because they show he's old, but he's not. Like, you can have a character who's that old and been around, but like the Emperor is spry, and he can talk, he can like chew the scenery. Apocalypse is the villain you cast to chew scenery.
Oh yeah.
And that is not happening here.
No.
Which I think is part of the reason why Quicksilver, whenever he's talking, is such a breath of fresh air, because he is kind of chewing the scenery, but he's doing it so smoothly.
Yeah.
Magneto is up to his powers, so now he's controlling all the metal in the world, and it is the vaguest threat these movies have ever introduced. And we've got a blue man talking about survival of the fittest who controls sand, but somehow Magneto's powers right now are so vague, because the guy is explaining in that war room, is like, zinc, iron, it's all at the bottom of the sea. He's pulling it all up. I'm like, okay, doing what with it?
Yeah. Like is he destabilizing the planet?
I guess he's
Or is he just like
yeah.
gathering stuff to throw at
He's
people?
creating that big shield around him. Is he creating a shield around Cairo to keep out threats?
Is that the point?
We see like bridges being torn apart and cars falling off of it, but why aren't all the cars being dragged away? Why
Is he destroying the world? Is that the point?
we see ships from the bottom of the ocean get lifted up, and yet not every single building is being ripped from the ground? Why aren't satellites being... Why I don't... It's so limiting. Why aren't people being like, my fillings?
Every bit of metal.
How do the X-Men they get a like plane copter or something and flight suits, which are battle suits from the Alkali base from Stryker's area. And by the way, Stryker just wandered away and left.
Yeah, well, he was running away from
but that
Wolverine.
was it. That was that character's exit. He entered meaninglessly and he left meaninglessly.
So the thing that they take away from this scene is the costumes.
The costumes and the transportation. They're able to fly there. But how are they able to do that? Isn't that made of metal?
Maybe not.
I don't understand anything going on with Magneto and his powers. Why, if this is what you wanted to do, why didn't you use the missiles?
Yeah, and they've got Magneto doing this, like tearing apart the world or whatever. But then you have Apocalypse talking about how his plan is to take over the minds of every individual on the planet. Right. So are we doing both?
And if that's what he needs Magneto for, why is it Apocalypse who's the one who tears up all the ground and sand and makes that giant pyramid if he can already do that? And,
oh my gosh!
And because he does, he wrecks up Cairo. He builds his own personal pyramid temple tomb thing for his mind transfer thing. But it's just like, okay, and like that's where it becomes like a disaster movie because it's just tearing that up and creating this kind of like apocalyptic wasteland thing here. But like, what is Magneto doing?
Yeah,
and
why is he
doing it?
Yeah.
So they land and they have this whole conversation about, it's kind of like this, it's supposed to be this morale booster on the plane where like, were you scared the first time you were an X-Men? And she's like, yeah, no. And then she's like, but we were brave and you're brave.
Well, it's because you're supposed to be seeing her growing from like a self-centered person into someone who is nurturing and caring of the younger generation.
And, she talks about how Havoc was very brave and everything. And they're going off like, all right, you guys fight. We got to get Xavier out and everything. So Nightcrawler, go get Xavier. We're going to go get Magneto. And Cyclops is like, what? Wait, some of us, we're not soldiers. Some of us can't control our powers. And she says, well, then don't. And which is a cool line, but the whole scene kind of feels like, Scott, your power is your courage. Jean, your sense of humor. It has that your husband's always quoting the Three Amigos. It has that kind of like, for some of us, illiteracy is it's she says that don't, but then she goes on and it's one of those like rev you up scenes that goes on too long. Like just stop while you're ahead. Mm-hmm. That's a cool line. Like, you can't control your power? Don't. But, there's some, there was some promo art for this movie that had Jean and Cyclops. And Cyclops is standing there. I think his glasses are off. It's just his optic glass going. And there's, like, some cool particle effects and maybe, like, snow? I don't know. And Jean is behind him, and she's holding his head and, like, aiming him. And it looked so cool, and it kind of felt like this really cool understanding of their relationship in some ways. But that is nowhere in this movie. Yeah. How does the promo art have more pathos and understanding of their characters? No, I don't think so. You want to watch a 3-hour movie of this for that one scene of her aiming Cyclops? But I just thought that was such a cool thing. Oh my gosh, we talked about Wolverine, but we didn't talk about... This is how all over the place this movie is. But before they leave, Jean gives Wolverine...
Oh, I hate this scene.
He does, because he's in beast mode and everything. She gives him back his name, Logan. And I think you hear Silver Fox's voice.
Oh, I don't know.
I think Logan is... her saying Logan is taken from X-Men Origins. I could be wrong. but I think that's what we're hearing.
The whole like young girl taming the beast imagery is just so,
because we never see him again. They never interact again. So this is the last time. I mean, if they had gone forward with bringing him in there, it would have been strange, because then he would have been like, oh, I remember you. You told me my name was Logan, but it's actually James. Why didn't you tell me my name was James?
Thanks a lot. Caused a lot of confusion.
It's too bad Wolverine doesn't stay, because I want him to. Because anytime Hugh Jackman's on screen, it's great. And I bet you would have made more than $155 million domestically had you kept Hugh Jackman in this movie. I guess with this whole Weapon X thing, what can you do with it, you know? If you had brought him in earlier or something.
So is this the part where Xavier has his "you're in my house" thing?
No, that's even later. So this is...
Oh my gosh.
I think we are at the point where he's fighting to keep Apocalypse out of his head from taking over his body, because he's like, no, and he's losing his hair. That's how he goes bald. Why does it have to be explained?
Why does it have to be explained?
People just go bald.
Wolverine's jacket again.
Yeah, it's the same
Why
thing.
are they obsessed in this series with explaining hair
and jackets
changing?
Yeah.
Like, I sort of was okay with Rogue.
Yep, Rogue's
like her
hair is explained.
Turning white. I mean, like,
Storm's
not really necessary, but fine. But yeah, just have her have white hair. She's a mutant. It's weird. Whatever.
Yeah.
So his hair falls out. Great.
So during all this, we have Psylocke fighting. We have the Horsemen fighting. Except for Magneto. He's just there being in his bubble, and you have Mystique and Quicksilver talking to him. Mystique is like, you know, you still have a family. The X-Men can be your family, I guess. We're your family? Magneto asks Quicksilver, why are you here? Quicksilver seems very hesitant, and then he says, I'm here for my family too. And I know it seems like you don't like that. I kind of like it. This Magneto, it's not like the dad you would want to be like, I'm your son at this moment.
Maybe, but I guess, like, if you're following both of their arcs, like you've planted Magneto trying to find a family. Like, he talks about how his family, his literal family, was taken away from him during the Holocaust. His has new a family was now. Lost. They're taken away, and so his entire modus operandi, whatever, if he has one.
I almost used that word earlier, and I didn't because I couldn't pronounce it.
He's all alone. He has no family.
Right.
That's it. So if you're following his arc, then maybe the thing that calms him down is finding out that he has more family. So that would be an arc that makes any sense at all, but ends up having no end and going in no direction at all. And then you have Quicksilver's arc, where his entire purpose for being here at all is looking for his father. And like, you've already seen him missing those points over and over. You've seen that happen. So it's not even like you're going to miss the element of him not telling him who his father is. So now you finally find this point where it would make sense for him to just say it. So him just accepting that he's not going to, again, doesn't have any power for me. It just feels like, okay, well, what was the point of anything that has happened so far?
Like, if I found out my real father was a serial killer, I probably wouldn't be like, I'm your son! But
that's not how it feels to me. It doesn't feel like he's like disappointed in now that he's seeing his father and he's doing bad things.
Already know from the...
It doesn't feel like that's the thing. Yeah, it feels like he's already processed the fact that he's a bad guy.
Yeah.
And now he wants to.
he had freedom.
He wants to just have this closure, and he just decides for some reason not to.
Yeah, if they had done something with that later, I could see why that frustration might not be there. But I understand, because that is like the last time these two characters interact.
Yeah.
And if they had if this had been Quicksilver's response, and I was like, I don't know. And then after later on when Magneto makes his turn, if that's when he's like, hey, good news. You're not alone there, champ. And you know what? I'm going to raise you now. Huh? How about that?
The son becomes the father, man.
But yeah, since this is the last time they interact, I totally understand that. Psylocke fighting everybody. You got Storm fighting everybody. You got lightning and optic blast stuff. And this is part of the reason why I like this movie more than I should. Because it feels... I mean, I know we have seen mutants fighting mutants before. But it is also kind of a series that is a little weirdly low on that at times. Yeah. And so, especially like the bigger powers, it seems to be a lot of time like Wolverine fighting mutants, and then everybody else like fighting soldiers, police, robots. And so like seeing Storm's lightning hit his optic blast, seeing Beast and Psylocke duking it out, seeing Angel and Nightcrawler fighting and stuff like that's that's something, I feel like an element that we haven't really seen. We got a little bit of it in First Class, but it feels bigger, and it feels like we're seeing characters that we actually know with names, and they've got like the cooler costumes. And I haven't talked about it too much, but like this movie is a lot more into its colors than it has been in the past. I think Days of Future Past, the future stuff kind of changed that. There's a lot more purple in this. You got a lot more purple lighting. You got a lot of like reds and oranges. You got a lot of blues and purples, just kind of like all over the place. It feels a little bit more colorful in these action scenes. The horsemen really, because the X-Men are all in those like all black flight suits. They're basically, X-Men 3 costumes in a lot of ways. Even though it's few and far between, and I can understand why people aren't like big on the ones we're seeing, I kind of appreciate getting that. I wish it was better around it. And I wish we cared about characters on both sides.
Yeah.
The Psylocke thing where she cuts the car in half is cool. It's the only thing she does, really. And that was everywhere. That was on TVs. That was billboards. There's no surprise about it. It's a cool shot. It's not how her power works. And then she makes, like, the psychic whip.
Yeah.
To, like, hit Beast. And then she makes 2 of them. And she's going to, like, psychically strangle them. I mean, I know Singer and obviously Kinberg don't really understand how any of these powers work. Because, as Chris Claremont always said, is the totality of her power is in this psychic knife. Like, it's more of a psychic attack. Like, she stabs her knife into your head, and now you're really getting a painful telepathic attack.
Yeah.
I guess it's just more, should Psylocke be cool in this? Should we be coming away from this being like, oh, Psylocke's cool, just like Deathstrike was cool? Or, why does it feel so less than that? You know?
Yeah.
Why were they able to pull off the silent but deadly type? Sorry, that's how you describe a fart. Why were we able to get this silent antagonist who left an impression with Deathstrike, but why does it feel like Psylocke doesn't have it? Is it because she kind of has lines? And so,
I think it's because it's just diffused, because there are several of them, and they don't really seem like a unit in any way.
Psylocke and Angel kind of have moments like split them up, we'll get them now, and then Angel has to pull Psylocke up to the thing, but Storm doesn't really seem connected with them, and Magneto's off on his own. I don't know, it's such, I know I've said diminishing returns, but it feels like that, even though Psylocke has never been here before. I mean, again, it would have been cool if Psylocke had motivation or lines or a character or any of that. And Psylocke is a cool character in the comics when you understand her, like, backstory and stuff. This is where, like, I'm kind of digging it, but it also kind of it gets slow because of all the Apocalypse stuff. Every time Apocalypse is on screen, the movie stops.
Yes,
which is definitely so crazy to think about Apocalypse. For me, whenever Apocalypse is on camera in the comics or a Sinister, I'm like, all right, I'm in it now. With this, it's like, oh gosh, back to Apocalypse. And there's a really cool shot where Nightcrawler, they all get to the plane and everything, and they're getting out of there, and Nightcrawler teleports Xavier there, and we get to kind of see the teleportation zone. And I used to know the name verbatim of what that zone is, but it's a cool like shot of seeing like what it looks like to Nightcrawler for teleporting. That shot, I'm like, well, okay, that's pretty cool. I like that. But now he can't teleport anymore. His energy is drained.
Because that's the thing. Have we had the psychic fight yet?
No, because the plane thing.
I am exhausted.
I know. And I like this movie more than you, and I'm still like, where the frick are we? They crash the plane. They have this big thing with which is still kind of exciting. They're gonna crash the plane. Psylocke is tearing it up. Angel's breaking the back of the plane. Nightcrawler's trying to teleport. They do. The plane crashes. Psylocke breaks out. I'm pretty sure all her arms would dislocate when she stops her fall by hitting the building with her psychic blade. They're all like trapped in a building. They're the freaking X-Men, and they're like trapped in a building like this is Black Hawk Down. Because Apocalypse is out there, and he's ready to just destroy them. And they're still trying to convince. Quicksilver shows up first, and because Apocalypse kind of stops talking, and Quicksilver just kind of walks up, goes, and then just starts punching him, which is very funny. And I like him just beating the crap out of him and seeing Apocalypse go flying. But then you realize how dumb the Apocalypse outfit kind of looks. He's like, whoa! But Apocalypse's power is also that he can track Quicksilver, so he does, covers the sand ground around his leg and stops him, and then breaks his leg, tells Psylocke to kill him, but then Psylocke cuts his throat, and we find out Psylocke is Mystique.
Mm-hmm.
Has Mystique seen Psylocke? Yeah, she has. But in this
See,
costume,
this would have been a moment that would have.
Yes.
I mean, you sort of have one by one the horsemen turning on him, and if it had just been Psylocke, that probably could have been a cool moment.
But she doesn't have any motivation to do or not do anything. So
True.
Why would she turn or not turn? Mystique, he grabs her by the neck. He's going to strangle her to death. Fox got into a lot of heat. Alyssa Milano called them out on this. A lot of posters, billboards were just this scene of Apocalypse strangling Mystique, and it said X-Men Apocalypse. No context.
Ugh, gross.
And she's like, so your movie is just strangling a woman, the film? And they're like, we'll take it down. It's just like, how tone deaf
I mean, very
very
tone deaf.
Somebody has to do the poster and say, do you like this? They're like, I love it. Somebody has to approve this, and then somebody else has to what is the point of having all these levels, all these people in the credits behind the scenes if nobody is going to say, hey, don't do that? Storm is suffering the same fate Famke Janssen did in X-Men Last Stand. All her character development is just facial expression, and we're supposed to interpret it because she sees this and she's kind of like, but that's Mystique. But she doesn't say, she's just kind of like, and then she kind of sits back and is like, what am I doing? And that's the other part. Like, okay, was she under Apocalypse's control? Was she not? Is this shocking enough to break that control?
A prop.
We know. I guess they're just trying to bank on the fact that we know Halle Berry's Storm. But
I don't think they're thinking at all. I don't think that they think it matters. I think that they're like, she's a cool, like she uses lightning. She's a horseman. We need something to shift. And so she's going to change her mind at the end.
He says, you're right. We are still connected. So I'm going to really mess him up now psychically. So there's the whole...
Now this is a cool moment.
It could be, yeah.
He shifts his posture, and he's like, "All right, here we go.
Yeah,
you're in my world now. So great, cool.
He goes into
lined up to be a good
astral
moment.
plane. Yeah, we're in the astral plane, which we haven't really seen. They even had to cut a scene from First Class where it was going to be Xavier versus Emma, but they said it was too much like Inception, so they cut that out. So this would be the first time we'd ever seen an astral plane thing for him. And this should be Xavier's moment, because he's like, he's like, you want my power? You want to know what it feels like to have everybody in your head? Which is also like a cool moment. And he just physically punches the Apocalypse in here. And Apocalypse gets knocked down. He's like, you're in my house now. And just keeps punching him. But it's like 2 hits, and then Apocalypse just turns the table. I'm like, well, what is the point of this buildup? It's exciting, and suddenly it's not.
It's completely
Why
wasted.
is this not like an extended action scene of Xavier just beating him down while the X-Men are dealing with him in the real world?
Oh, yeah.
Did you play X-Men Legends? Do you remember there's a moment where you play as Xavier fighting the Shadow King, and Xavier is like decked out in like samurai armor.
Yeah.
And you have this giant astral plane. Why aren't we getting something like this? And then
could we at least have a full scene before he loses and is embarrassingly destroyed in his own wheelhouse?
As soon as he says, this is my house, Apocalypse grabs him and says, you need a bigger house. And then starts getting taller and taller, which it's like, okay, now we get to see big Apocalypse. I would have liked to see big Apocalypse. Why does it not look stupid here? You could have made it not look stupid in the other stuff. Why couldn't Apocalypse in the real world be growing and everything? Xavier, who had that one cool second, of like, you want to know what it's like? Welcome to my house, brother. All of a sudden, he's like, help me.
Yeah.
Somebody.
Ugh.
He's killing me. It's like if you want to keep enjoying that scene, you have to turn it off as soon as he says, welcome to my house.
Yeah, and just use your imagination.
And then maybe go for a walk, and then come back. It's like, well, some time has passed. Magneto finally shows up, because he's like, oh, I'm winning. A beam comes down sideways, another one comes down, it's an X. That should be, like, super cool for me. That scene. But I don't care about Magneto's turn in this, because I don't get it, and I don't get what he was doing. And does he still have his power enhancements? Can he do more than just throwing a beam into somebody?
another thing that should be cool is you have that happen, and then you have kind of everybody from all over the place having this teamwork moment.
Yeah. Cyclops is using his full optic blast.
Mm-hmm.
Storm is hitting him with lightning. Magneto's hitting him with a bunch of metal, a bunch of shrapnel.
But at this point, you just don't care.
Right. Well,
you just don't care.
I'm kind of into it, but then they kind of like stop doing it because they're like, we can't do it. Like Cyclops like runs out of energy, which isn't.
And it ends up being a lot of like sort of similar to the build up with Xavier.
Yeah.
It's just like a big event happens, and then it still doesn't really help anything.
It reminds me of Last Stand where you're kind of excited because Iceman's gonna fight Pyro, and then it's just them doing a blast that's stronger than a different blast.
Mm-hmm.
And it's less, not as exciting. You know what else I noticed? Ian McKellen always made flying look so elegant. He always seemed so regal when he was levitating and moving around. Fassbender doesn't have it. He always kind of looks like he's leaning back, like he's sitting on a stool while flying. It's strange. Finally, the tides are turned because we remember that Jean's here. Did you know Jean was here?
Oh, she's in this scene. Interesting.
Yeah, but you wouldn't believe it. But Jean is sometimes in things.
She's there sometimes.
She's here. We get a moment with reverent, angelic, church-like music. I might be describing that wrong. Suddenly, they're in the basement in his astral plane. Xavier's made it look like the basement of the mansion. And the Cerebro door opens up. The camera's doing a Dutch angle and turns. And it's Jean. Like, release your power! Jean blasts away the astral plane of Apocalypse. And he's like, huh? And they're like, we're doing it. And now they're using all their powers again. They're like, wait a second. I do have more optic energy. And Storm's shooting them and everything. And Beast is saying, like, it's not enough. But then it cuts and Jean is like slowly walking off, and the music's definitely more like violin heavy, walking on air. You get the Phoenix symbol, the Phoenix, what am I trying to say? The bird, the Firebird. Thank you. Phoenix symbol is behind her, and she's just blasting him away. She's screaming, and Apocalypse is just like, oh, all has been revealed, is deatomized, basically.
Yeah.
So I guess Apocalypse is saying like, oh, she's the future, and he's happy about it now?
Yeah.
What was your plan?
The impression.
Apocalypse.
So let me talk about this Phoenix moment. I don't love that she has to be told
to unleash your
power.
Help.
Yeah. So I think storytelling wise, it might have been more charitable to her, having just done nothing for this entire movie, to be able to see that Xavier is struggling and just step in. Yes. Just be like, I can do something. Here I go. I'm going to go. So she's not just a tool for Xavier. That having been said, I do like how they present her. I think she is very poised. I think she has a lot, of... once she's allowed to release herself, she has a lot of control and is obviously very powerful. Then there is one moment that I have to give credit to whoever made the decision. I don't know who it was, but I have to give credit that she lets go. She destroys everything. She uses the full extent of her power. And then at the end of that, she steps back calmly onto the ground and is fine.
Yeah.
It would have been
imagine a world where Jean could just use her powers and be fine.
Right. The obvious choice would be she goes all out and then she passes out.
Yeah. Oh, sure. And, bloody nose.
Yes.
Yeah, where's the bloody nose?
We have to show the weakness of this woman. And she has the power, but at least she's not, possessed enough to control that power.
Right.
It's just this raw femininity that just goes nuts. But they actually went with this choice of having her be fine. Like, she reins it in. She has that very self-possessed step back onto the platform. And never shows any, that I can remember, she never shows any sign of being winded or being upset or what have I done? Nothing. So I have to give credit to whoever made that choice, because that is a strong and unusual choice for this particular moment of a powerful female character.
Kind of get the idea that maybe this was her using that power, but it's still not going forward, she might not be readily able to just blast away with it.
Oh, sure. Okay. Yeah. But she's not wiped out by it.
No, she's not wiped out by it. I know some people who don't like that she suddenly has this power. I think it tracks with her.
I think that makes sense because she's been holding it in the whole time. Like, she doesn't suddenly have the power. She's always had the power. Yeah. She's just been reining it in the whole time.
But in terms of, like, being, like, adept at controlling, I think she's gonna, still have to work at it. I think this is, like, a moment where she's just, like, lets go of it. And,
of course.
I mean, the next movie's Dark Phoenix, so who knows? Dark Phoenix kind of retroactively makes this scene a bit creepy with the Xavier thing, because we know that, again, in Dark Phoenix, just like in Last Stand, he's put up mental blocks. Mm-hmm. So should we interpret this now, with that foreknowledge, also releases the blocks at this moment to use her as a weapon? I mean, you're right. If she had seen this thing happening by itself and he hadn't been like, unleash your power and everything, I mean, I guess that's supposed to be the fulfillment of their, like, conversation, where she, that bedroom conversation that we had earlier. But not everything... this movie proves not everything has to be fulfilled.
Yeah. Or just don't plant that to begin with. Like, that's an easily solved problem.
At Toy Fix Podcast says, this movie is so boring, but I legit loved the Phoenix sequence at the end. Yeah, I don't hate the Phoenix stuff. Obviously, what are these movies going to do? That's the only thing these movies know how to do. Psylocke leaves when she sees the writing on the wall, I guess? Because we don't know why anybody's working with anybody half the time.
Yeah, you have no idea what her motivation is or what anybody's motivation is. So when they make decisions, it's like, okay, well, that happened for some reason.
And then Xavier gives Moira back her memories. And I'm like, well, if you love her
Isn't
so much...
Isn't that so gracious of him to give her back her own
like,
memories?
I'm sorry I took those from you. Like, well, if you love her so much, don't mind roofie her.
Yeah.
Xavier? Just
learn a lesson, Xavier.
Yeah, and now she's, like, happy. I mean, but, like, she's not back in Dark Phoenix. So did she die? I don't know. What a weird plot to focus on. Now we cut to them fixing the mansion and fixing the house. We talked about this with the cartoon, but fixing the house is harder than just having Magneto and Jean put stuff where it's supposed to go.
What you don't see is that both of them have had several years of architectural school.
Oh my gosh.
Leading up to this.
Who's doing the electrical work? Who's doing the plumbing? Are people getting in there and like, no light switches. And they have a basement that blew up. Who's rebuilding that? Who's, like, is she psychically making blankets and beds for the students? Who's filling the fridge? Did you put a fridge in there? It's just, I don't understand.
It's maddening.
Neither of them are looking at a blueprint.
No, they're just
it's funny
magically recreating.
In the cartoon, even they, like, put more work into it. They were, like, with saws and, like, hammering things. Like, it is taking a longer time, but, like, we make fun of it even when the cartoon's doing it. You can't do that in live action.
Mm-mm.
You know? Ugh.
Mm-mm.
Not like that. Not like that.
No, it's bad. It's a really bad moment.
Quicksilver, this is why I can see you're frustrated with the Quicksilver scene, because Storm's like, he's your father? Mystique told me. It's like, well, why is Mystique just telling everybody?
That's the kind of thing that you keep to yourself.
And then Storm's like, are you going to tell him? He's like, no, maybe some other time. But for now, I'm just going to stick it out here. And Storm's like, I think I will too. It's like, hi, Storm. Welcome to the movie. It's not your fault. You've been here as mainly a weapon. You had lines about 20 minutes into the film, and now you have lines about 2 minutes before the film ends.
Yep.
But it did leave me kind of like, well, good. Now we'll have Storm next movie, right? Right? Hilary, will Storm have lines next movie?
Surely she will.
Then we cut. Why do they do this? They're talking about training the X-Men, and it cuts to Magneto and Xavier again. And he's like, you have a place here. He's like, I can't stay here. Blah, blah, blah. And they do the doesn't it ever wake you speech again. Why dare you? Movie, how dare you? One of the best speeches and lines and scenes in the first X-Men movie, played perfectedly, but is that a word, perfectedly? It's played perfectly.
Probably perfectly, yeah.
That's my power, Hilary. Played perfectly by Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen. I mean, that's such a great scene.
It's a masterful scene.
And then it was so good they used it in the trailers for the second one because it was just so good. Why are you saying it here? Doesn't it ever wake you in the night if somebody's gonna come for you and take your children? You just did that with Apocalypse!
It makes no sense.
It
makes no sense.
Magneto!
And it's like they're not even trying. Like, I know that those two are good actors.
Yeah, we know
but it's
that.
like they both know. They know that what they're doing is stupid and has been done. And so they're just like, we're just going to say the lines.
It feels
whatever.
I get Xavier's like, I feel a great swell of pity for the poor soul. And it feels directed at Magneto in the same way that it did with Xavier. But it just kind of feels nothing works in that scene. And it just feels like treading on holes. But again, diminutive returns, right?
Yep. And then you cut in to see Mystique sitting on the edge of a desk and like ripping a textbook in half.
She's like, get on the tables. Come on, all of you. Seize the day.
Those lines, the lines that she says, I genuinely, I cannot understand how anyone would ever write those lines and not see how cliched and stupid they are.
Mystique is Mystique's a teacher now. At Xavier's. Finally, I've always wanted a story where Mystique
is a teacher.
The mutant terrorist and no hold barred freedom fighter is a teacher at the school.
She's finding her ultimate fulfillment as a person in this new role of holding people's hands into becoming sort of fighters, also, I guess.
Magneto, when he's like, I'm not staying here, and he leaves, and Xavier's like, well, goodbye. I'm like, goodbye? Goodbye? This man in this movie just killed millions of people, maybe? Because we saw the bridges that broke. Cars fell into the water.
Yeah.
There are people who are dead because of Magneto in this movie. So if you're not even including the crimes from the previous movie and other things he's done, this is a big one. You can be arrested, Xavier. You're aiding and abetting at this point.
He definitely is.
This is not good. You can't just keep saying, like, goodbye, old friend. Call me up if you ever need to kill more people and then let you go.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Yeah. At what point do we actually hold him responsible for anything that he does? You never defeat Magneto, you know? You just, like, convince him to stop what he's doing and be a good guy now, and then you just let him go.
What's the point of plastic prisons?
What's the point?
Set up the danger room now. We've got Sentinels now, like the 70s Sentinel, which I thought was kind of a cool thing. But also, so Xavier's keeping Sentinels? That seems bad.
They're his pets.
But I kind of thought it was cool. Like, he's gonna use these like Sentinels to train them. They're in costumes that I want to see them in all the time. In this scene. Like,
well, you can't.
Nightcrawler is in a costume that looks like his comic book one. Cyclops has like the blue costume with like the shoulder chest belt kind of thing.
Yeah.
And got like some yellow and blue in there. Storm's costume has a bit of white like that. And then, I don't know what Jean's costume looks like, the yellow and blue costume from the 90s. I was like, cool, we'll get to see those costumes. And then with X-Men Dark Phoenix, it's like, no, you get to see the yellow and black costumes that they're all wearing like a uniform. Like, stop doing that. Just give us the costumes. It's one of those failed promises again. Failed promise cliffhanger. It's funny because they're all getting ready to battle. You got Cyclops powering up his optic blast, Storm, lightning, even Nightcrawler is like hissing with his fangs, and then there's Jean who's just kind of like,
I am also here.
Looking around the room, sure. I'm like, come on, you can't do like a fiery eye thing. You can't have her hand up by her head and like a little phoenix thing. And anyway. But then it ends, and the X-Men music comes in, and I just love that X-Men music. I can't help
all is forgiven.
John, hey, that's 90210's theme. We can't steal that. The John Ottman theme, that I just love it so much, and it comes kind of in, and it's a bit more heroic, and I guess a bit more like superhero movie this time around with this end credits. That it's weird. This movie leaves me frustrated, but then it ends, and I'm kind of jazzed. It's just, stop doing this to me.
You're broken, man.
You're broken.
You have a toxic relationship with these movies.
Well, I'm saying, like, while watching this movie, I'm like, I get frustrated. And then, like, it ends, I'm like, all right, yeah, they're in their costumes, the music, all right, let's do this. But now I know that it's not all fulfilled again. And yeah, you're right, I'm broken, that's okay. That's my real power.
Oh, man.
They said they're going to change things with the next movie, Hilary. They said they've changed.
Uh-huh.
Maybe I can fix them.
You can't fix them, Eric.
I can!
Eric!
If I do a podcast talking about all the mistakes they made, but how much I still love them.
They can never love you the way you need to be loved.
Gosh. Let's see what we got some on Twitter here. E.L. Shasher on Twitter says, so disappointing.
Mm-hmm.
At Miss Music Box 91 says, I haven't seen this movie in a very long time, but when I think of this movie, I just think, meh. I feel like there are a lot of missed opportunities and poorly portrayed characters. Psylocke should have stolen the show, but she's barely memorable.
Yeah, all true.
How do you feel about this movie, Hilary?
Oh, man. No, I want you to guess. Guess how I feel about this movie.
I feel like you see its faults, but you're still a little warmer to it than you expected, especially this time around. And I think you thought the standout roles were Caliban and Havoc.
Havoc?
Yeah.
No.
You thought the movie really picked up when Havoc was on screen.
No, all of that is false. No, I truly, like, I was kind of worried towards the beginning of watching the movie that it wasn't going to be as bad as I remembered, and I was going to be kind of disappointed that I didn't hate it as much as I did. But by the time I got to the end, I could not stand it. I mean, like, even just fundamental things like dialogue, like setting aside all of the insanity with characters and with the plot jumping all over the place, just the basic dialogue is so trite. Everything that they say is just so, like, simple and just, like, to the point, and no, there's no flair to any of it. And it's just so pointless. And the team has no chemistry whatsoever. There's never any attempt at humor just completely falls flat because it's all just, it's fake. None of it feels genuine. Like, they'll have their cute little moments of, like, tripping over things or whatever. Mm-hmm. But then you just have those bare shots at, like, Mystique being like, that's funny. But it's so contrived. It doesn't feel like a genuine moment with anything because they have no chemistry whatsoever. I hated it. I hated that movie. I hated it. It's such a waste of time. Hate it.
I definitely was colder on it this time around. But you know what I think it is? I think I can turn this movie on and just, like, turn my brain off and just watch it and get, like, the X-Men stuff that I like from it when I can. But sitting there taking notes and having to, like, research it as it goes,
yeah,
you know, that makes you feel every second of this movie.
Oh, yes.
And so I think that's definitely not the way for me to ever do it again. But I have watched this, like, just on my own, and I just turn it on, and I just kind of, like, turn it off and just sit there and decide, like, all right, I like that. All right, I don't like that. All right, I like that. It's definitely one of the worst films of the X-Men series. I don't know where I put it it's in my bottom 3 for sure. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's higher than the least favorite ones I have, but I was also a little bit warmer with Last Stand the last time we watched it for this show.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really know. I don't think anything, you know, it's up to the MCU now to prove if they can make something I like even less than Wolverine Origins. But this, yeah, I mean, I know it. This isn't me confused, me being like, what's wrong with you people? This movie's good. This is me fully understanding that this is a bad movie, that Apocalypse is wasted 100%, and it's disappointing because that means the MCU can't use Apocalypse now and do a more comic accurate Apocalypse, right? I mean, they probably wouldn't. They wouldn't choose the villain that's in the one that everybody agrees is one of the worst right out of the gate.
Yeah, probably.
And which is probably fine. We can see new stuff, but, like, it's too bad because now, is this the only movie version of Apocalypse we'll ever see?
Possibly.
Motivations are mud. His speeches are dull. They've made him into the dullest character, and he should just be so over the top and, like, fun. He doesn't have to have the deepest emotional motivations, but he should still be, like, fun to have on screen.
Yeah.
I mean, watching the X-Men all team up to fight him, that's the first time we've ever seen the X-Men all, like, team up against one villain, because they never really know how to make Magneto combat effective.
Yeah.
With the X-Men in these movies because of the way they present his powers. I mean, that scene is whatever, even with that happening. The characters I'm excited to see, like Cyclops and Nightcrawler and Storm, are varied in terms of success. It's fun seeing them, like, in action, but in terms of character, they're still not there. Psylocke is cool, but what is she doing? The joy for me just comes from like, look, it's Psylocke. She's wearing her Psylocke costume. Oh, look, it's Cyclops. Look, it's Nightcrawler. He's back. We haven't seen him in a bit. But yeah, it's like motivational and plot stuff. Outside of that, like warmth I get from like the sense that it's an annual and like a side adventure, it's just too long. And so like I just have to take what I like from it as it comes and accept that it's not a good movie, but I weirdly still don't hate putting it on. I don't know how.
Well, it's good that you can get some benefit from it.
You know what we didn't talk about? Another unfulfilled promise that really hurts my heart is the end credit sequence.
My word!
They're cleaning up the bullets. They're cleaning up the blood that Wolverine has spread because they're trying to get back the DNA. We don't know who these people are. We just know that they want the DNA, they want the evidence, they want the bullets and everything. And then somebody has a briefcase and it says the Essex Corporation?
Yep.
Essex Industries?
Essex something.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what it is. It just says Essex. Nathaniel Essex, Sinister. And there was Dark Phoenix and New Mutants and Logan and this... Like, those were coming, and this had just come out. There had been an interview with Simon Kinberg, Screenwriting Magazine or something, and somebody had asked, like, is Mr. Sinister, it seems like you might be setting him up as a all-movies kind of villain, with New Mutants and Logan and Dark Phoenix. You know, is that happening? Simon Kinberg said, I can't say anything, but you're very smart. And nothing came from that. We never saw the Essex stuff. What was that? I mean, the only thing you can track is that maybe this Essex Corporation got a hold of Wolverine's DNA and is just a company, and they're responsible for maybe like lending it out or providing it so they can create Lara, who appears in Logan. That's the only thing you can do. But in terms of like putting it as Essex, what the crap, movies?
Yep. Yeah.
But on the other hand, maybe it's good. Maybe now the MCU could be like, all right, we'll use Mr. Sinister. Nobody used him, and he could be like a big-time villain. But,
sure.
All right, Hilary, you never, ever have to watch Apocalypse again.
And you know what? I never, ever will.
Yeah. What happens when your son is older and is like, Mom, I want to watch all the X-Men movies?
Well, I will show them all to him, and he will never know that Apocalypse exists.
And Dust vs. Tweak everywhere online. Apart from other shows on the Radio Meanwhile Network, I'm the co-host of the podcast, The All the Books Show. Thank you to Prophetic Music for our theme song. You can join us for our next episode as we return to Season 2 of the X-Men animated series with Whatever It Takes and Red Dawn.
Oh, phew. Back to the animated series, man.
Next movie we cover, Logan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Hilary, we're in the home stretch, and I am a little sad about it with the movies.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because we've got Logan, Deadpool 2, Dark Phoenix, and then New Mutants. I mean,
assuming we ever see it, yeah.
Yeah, that's still 4 movies, but like Logan and Dark Phoenix are both like endings. And then Deadpool 2 is kind of like this weird one in the middle. But yeah, it's going to be, I'm kind of sad that we're going to run out of movies to talk about. I mean, 4 is still a couple episodes away, but still.
Yeah, that is sad.
We've got more X-Men movies behind us than we do ahead of us now.
Yes.
All right, well, again, you can find more about this show and others like it at the network's website, radiomeanwhile.com. Please follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Previously on X. And please rate, subscribe, and share the show on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.
Thanks. Bye.